Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing okay and can hear me fine. If you could confirm me in the chat, we'll quickly get started. Really excited to be with you again and start discussing more interesting stuff. And we have a huge lineup of guests. We would be hearing a lot of things related to security as well as technical account manager's journey in AWS. So I hope everyone is enjoying the weekend, and we appreciate your time you give to us on weekend and help us in helping others also in becoming certified and becoming more knowledgeable about cloud. I have Parna with me. She is right now monitoring chat on the back end. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions, any doubts, any confusion, as many as you have, and we would respond to them as we get time. And if you are enjoying this session, we would request you to please share this in your network and let other also know about how these sessions can be beneficial to them. You never know how many life you could touch just by your simple repost on LinkedIn. So please do that too. I'll quickly get started with what is expected for today. I'll add things to stream. So we are on week number 6, which is 12th August, batch 04. And as we now know that we are nearing to week 8, which would be the last technical track, and then we'll go into the behavioral track. And if you have checked the schedule, we are open for week 8 agenda. So if you feel there is a fundamentals topic which you want us to cover, any security topic you want us to cover, please let us know in the LinkedIn group, and we could pick up a topic and explain you about it. So fundamental, we are open for one suggestion for the last session, and same applies for security too. So anything which you feel can benefit a greater audience, not a specific one, but if it is a greater audience beneficial thing, we would be obviously happy to include that. So please help us in selecting the topic which may be catering to a bigger audience need. All right. I'll quickly go off camera so that you could focus more on the content rather than my expressionless. Remove myself from screen, and hopefully you could have now a bigger screen visible to you. Migration, some case studies. Yes, we could talk about that, Pawan. Thanks for that input. And okay, we will see some of them. Okay, we will talk about that. Now, moving on to the topics for today, what we are going to cover today. So, we will be starting with fundamentals track, which is disaster recovery. So, I'll talk about some of the disaster recovery concept, some of the things like pilot light, RTO, RPO, and then what are the ways to create active scenarios. So, we'll discuss that. And then Parna will help us with security track, which is threat detection. So, she would help us there. Afterward, we would be hearing from Laura Smith, who is a technical account manager. She's joining us from US, so probably it would be very early for her, but still she is going there. So we will be discussing details about how a technical account manager works on day-to-day basis. So we'll discuss that. Sham has a suggestion here: backup and recovery in AWS. So that is also a good suggestion, Sham. We will consider that also, and based on how many votes we get or how many other topics we get. So yes, thanks for that. Okay, so let me quickly get started here. Like what we are trying to discuss here, we are trying to talk about disaster recovery. Obviously, disaster recovery is something every business should be planning for. If it is a very small business, it may still not be that relevant. But when we are talking about customers who are using AWS for production system and with thousands or millions of customers, they obviously have to plan for disaster recovery. If you have read about a famous quote from Werner Vogels that always talks about that everything fails all the time, and we need to ensure that we are able to mitigate those problems. Now, just going into cloud doesn't mean that I would never have disaster. I would be able to mitigate a lot of them because of moving to cloud, but still there are chance of disasters happening, and we need to be better prepared for it as a business. Because if your application is not running, obviously you are not making any revenue, or it is detrimental to your reputation as a company or individual, that your services are not available. So we should plan for disaster recovery. We'll discuss some of the topics as we move forward. Now, I would prefer to talk about very basic stuff so that everyone is on the same page rather than making assumption. So what is a disaster? I would say disaster is a serious disruption, right? So Disaster is a serious disruption which is trying to create problem for your business. Now you have one network cable disconnected, or you have one of the server failed, one of the server accidentally shut down. I won't be calling it a disaster. I would be calling a mass scale event a disaster, which is bringing down lots and lots of stuff down. And if I go in technical terms of IT, I would say disaster is an unexpected problem resulting in slowdown, interruption, or network outage in IT system. So it's not just about availability, it's about how your services are accessible and available to all your users. If it is slow, it can still be disaster, right? Maybe you have service like Google where people search, and if your results are coming very slow, they may look for some alternate. Obviously, that is possible. Interruption, maybe that is a service is down in some portion of the world. Maybe you have some outages in your IT system. These are all considered as disaster as we see these things here. All right. Now, disasters can be categorized into natural disasters such as earthquake, floods, fire, landslide. This is something which we do not have any control on. Sometimes you may get a pre-warning, like maybe if there is a flood, then you may get a warning. If there is a hurricane warning, you may be getting prepared for it. But most of the time, natural disaster is something which we do not get any advance information, and there is no way we could avoid it. We as a human have no control on things which nature has sending to us. Now, next type of things we could have is a technical disaster. Technical disaster could be in terms of power failure or network outages can happen. Like you may have heard that maybe some digging company was doing something and a area's internet was all down because they have dig into a cable. Those type of things happen. Maybe power outages, grid failure happen. So that is how things can go wrong. So that could be considered as a technical disaster. Again, not something which you can control in every aspect of your environment, but we would be having another issues which is human action. These are very prominent. These happens in companies of all shapes and size. We as a human, we do error, we make mistake, we do misconfiguration. Sometimes something get unauthorized modification. I remember, I won't call it disaster but a challenge. Like we were monitoring lots of servers, and we were using RDP to connect to those servers, right? And by mistake, instead of closing my laptop, I pressed Alt F4, and that was a production server which went down. I won't call it disaster, but these type of human error always happen. So we need to be aware about that. Why? What can we do so that we can control these errors and then mitigate these errors? So these are my definition of disaster. Our focus is on recovery. So, how does disaster recovery actually work? So, you may control some disaster, you may avoid some disaster, but let's see how disaster recovery works. So, idea here is that we want to be prepared for recovering from a disaster. Like if you talk about countries, they prepare their rapid action forces, or they have their forces who can go maybe in an earthquake hit location, or maybe into a flood hit area, and they can try to help people in that case. So that is a disaster recovery planning which they are doing. Every country maintain these type of forces. When we talk about organization address the following three components when they are talking about disaster recovery. First is prevention. It's prevention is always better than cure. We always hear that, and it is IT is no different than that. So if you could prevent something from happening, maybe it's through better security, maybe through resilient architecture, maybe through better planning, that would obviously be much better approach rather than mitigating something. So prevention is always what we would expect. Second is anticipation. There are teams who do mock drills that what would happen or what could possibly go wrong, right? We do fire drills sometime. That is again a preparation for a disaster. So in a building, if there is a fire alarm sounding, maybe fire wardens would monitor that how people evacuate, how much time it takes to gather them into a safe place, how challenging things were. What if the people were having some listening difficulties and they could not hear the alarm? What are the other mechanisms? How we will go and swap all the floor that nobody is sitting there. So that is what we call anticipation. So anticipation can also be something which you may be looking for. So you are we are predicting possible future disaster and looking for consequences and planning appropriate disaster recovery procedure. That is what we call anticipation. And then last is mitigation. You may try to avoid all these things by prevention, anticipation, and be prepared for it. But if it happens at the end, we need to have a way and a proper plan that how it would be mitigated. I don't want to panic at that moment, and then only I would be able to recover from those disasters. This comes to a military saying which says, more you sweat in peace, less you bleed in war. Same thing applies here too, that if you can be prepared, you have a mitigation plan, your people processes are ready, then mitigation would be much, much faster. Otherwise, it would be very complicated. So, this is some type of disaster recovery mechanism. We'll talk in technical details also. So now sometimes we compare disaster recovery with availability. Right? That is a very common thing. But I would put it like that they both are different, but they in a way are feeding to resiliency. So when I talk about availability, our objective is to measure mean value of period of time over period of time, that how long I keep my application available. When availability is concerned, then the categorization is MTBF, mean time between failure, mean time to recover. This is how availability is calculated. But when it comes to disaster recovery, there we have two characteristics, RTO and RPO, and we will be talking about what is RTO and RPO in a minute. But disaster recovery can be compared to availability, which is another important component of your resiliency strategy. Disaster recovery major objective for one time event. I don't expect disaster to happen every day. If it is happening, then there is something fundamentally wrong with the business or the way we are doing things. So we need to be aware about those also. So I don't expect disaster recovery process to be invoked every day, but we would be always looking for ways to ensure things are working properly. So disaster recovery is a one-time event probably. Availability is a continuous event which we have to always ensure. All right. Thanks, Pavan. Thanks for that. Let's now talk about RPO and RTO. Now, people from India, they may relate RTO to a road transport office. It is not that. RPO, RTO here is in talking in terms purely for our technical knowledge about availability and disaster recovery. So let's talk about concepts like RPO, recovery point objective. Very commonly misunderstood. And then let's talk about what is recovery point objective and how we will use it. If I have to lay it down into plain single simple English, I would say recovery point objective says how much data you can afford to lose. Sounds very negative, but this is a reality of a business. You may try your best, but maybe there are chances that you may be having some issues with your data, and that is what RPO would monitor on. So, how much data you can afford to lose. Now, when you talk to business people, they would say, hey, we can't afford to lose any data. We want our RPO to be zero. That is a possibility, but there is a cost associated, and we'll talk about how difficult it could be if every application requires that RPO. So, in plain English, I would call it how much data you can afford to lose. That is what we mean by RPO. And if I put it little more elaboratively, how much data will be lost when a disaster happens? How to quantify that number? The easiest way to understand that, let's consider that you have a backup or a replication schedule, right? So probably it would be expected that as a business owner, you have set up a backup. Maybe it is a legal requirement also in some places, or a compliance requirement also. And obviously, to ensure your business continues in corner case scenario, you would be taking care of your backup. So if you have a backup configured, probably it would be a scheduled backup, and on a specific schedule, you would be taking backup and then moving forward with those objects. So if I have configured my backup to happen daily, every day 10 p.m. So Monday 10 p.m. backup finished, done, finished properly. Tuesday 10 p.m. again backup completed, no issues on that. And Wednesday 10 p.m. backup was about to start, but at 9:59 my systems crashed. Just before my backup was about to be kicked in, my system has crashed. which means if I could recover, fine. If I could not, I may want to perform the restore operation. And if you look at the data we have captured data only up to Tuesday 10 p.m. and up to Wednesday 10 p.m., that is around 24 hours. That data may be lost. That is the maximum data loss which may happen. So I would say if you have a daily backup configured, then your RPO or recovery point objective is 24 hours or 1 day. The maximum you may get data loss is up to 1 day, because that's what your schedule is. How you could reduce or increase it, you could do that, depends. So what you could say, hey, I do not have a requirement, or my data is not changing that frequently that I want to perform daily backup. Maybe my business is okay to have weekly backup completed. So every Sunday 10 p.m. we would be completing the backup. Completely fine, you could do that. That would mean your RPO is 1 week. So Sunday, let's say tomorrow is 13th August, you completed the backup, and then on next 28th August, you would be completing the next backup. Something breaks in between, that would be your data loss, because your backup schedule was weekly. So it depends. And if you are more concerned or it's a critical application, you could even say, I would be doing a monthly backup if it is not that critical. Or you could say, hey, this doesn't work well, I would be performing a hourly backup. So whatever is your backup frequency, whatever is your backup cycle, that actually translates into RPO, which is what is the maximum data loss which may happen. That is what we mean by recovery point objective. All right. I hope this thing is clear. Let's keep moving forward to the next topic. Next topic here is about RTO, recovery time objective. Let me take an example here to explain. Probably we have discussed about changing the car wheel into the previous classes, also the funny way and the actual way. But idea here is, let's say if there is a wheel failure, if there is a tire problem, if you have a spare wheel, you may be able to replace the faulty wheel and you will be on track again in few minutes. So I had this failure, I had to stop the car, then I have to replace the wheel, and then I have to start again, and I'm done. Why this was easier? Because I had a spare wheel. If I do not have spare wheel, then obviously it may take a little bit more time for me to maybe call to a towing company, or maybe get my tire out, take it to a repair shop, get it repaired, come back, fix it, and then move forward. So that is what is doing here, is increasing my time to be back on the road. So keeping a tire as a spare is helping me to recover faster. I can't predict or I can't stop my wheel from getting bad. It may happen anytime, or it may happen to any vehicle. But idea here is, if that happens, I am prepared. I have a spare wheel which has been tested, which has sufficient air pressure, and if there is a disaster, I would just stop my car, replace the wheel, and within few minutes I am again back on track. That is what we mean by recovery time objective. Right. So recovery time objective is the measure of how soon your business can recover, how you can keep on moving forward if the disaster happens. Question from Ali: taking backup hourly other than a week backup affect the cost as well? See, cost will always affect anything which you do. When you are replicating data, there is a cost associated. So backup would be the backup retention would require you to have some storage, that would be cost. So these are all rational factor which are interrelated to cost. So obviously, if you are performing, let's say, daily backup, then your cost is little lesser. If you are performing hourly backup, maybe your cost would be higher because of the network data transfer, because of the software licensing, because of your WAN bandwidth usage. So it depends. So you have to always weigh in that, should I have spare wheel, one or two? Like if I look at this vehicle, probably this vehicle would have one spare wheel, but it doesn't guarantee that only one wheel would fail. What I could do in that case, I could say, let me keep a extra wheel too. So I have now two spare wheel, but obviously that would mean my cost is going up, and I would have little less space in my car because I have to accommodate an extra wheel too. So it all depends how we are trying to utilize it. What about incremental backup, Ramandeep? Yes, you could do incremental backup, but it will not increase probably your storage cost, but it would still increase your data transfer cost, because it's when we say that we are doing, let's say, 4 GB of data transfer, it is not exactly 4 GB because of the HTTP methods and because of the TCP way of working. This 4 GB may actually translate into around 10 GB of data transfer. So though it increment stores about 4 GB, maybe the actual data transfer would be much, much higher. So it may not have cost impact on your storage, but it may have cost impact on your bandwidth. So that what can be affecting. Now you may have a requirement here that, okay, I'm capturing the backup here, somebody is processing backup at my destination, and that would again require compute power. Plus, what I also may happen that, let's say I am performing a daily or hourly backup. So I have a source and I have a target. Now, if it is an hourly backup, that would mean I have to keep my target always running. I am keeping it 24 by 7 running. But if it was a daily backup, then I don't have to run this target 24 by 7. My backup job starts at 10 p.m. I could say 9:45, my target machine would get ready. It would accept backup job. As soon as backup job finishes, at maybe at 11, I would shut down the machine. So I am paying only 1 hour cost or little more than 1 hour. So it would depend on what you are trying to achieve. So obviously there would be increase in the cost, not just about the storage, but also about the bandwidth and the uptime of your destination. So just be aware about those factors. All right. All right. So let's keep on. So will PITR, point in time recovery, also increase the cost? I would say it depends. Naman, it depends. I would say it depends on that what you are capturing on that. So let's say if you are doing log processing for that point in time recovery, and that log storage keeps cost, log storage has to be retained for longer period. Obviously, there would be cost impact on that too. So yes, it may increase. So cost depends on multiple factor. It's not a black and white way of describing things. So it may affect your cost or it may not. So I would say my favorite answer here, it depends. Okay. Coming back to RPO RTO discussion, let's go ahead in little more technical term. So when we talk about RPO and RTO, if we do a tabular comparison, we would say RPO focuses on data loss prevention, how we could ensure data loss doesn't happen. That is the main focus area of RPO. RTO says I want to recover the whole business if something goes wrong. So that is what my whole business recovery of RTO is. Coming forward, then we say what it depends on. RPO would depend on your backup frequency. As I explained, weekly backup, daily backup, hourly backup, per minute backup, it depends. So it will depend on how frequently you are taking backup. Whereas in terms of RTO, it would depend on speed of recovery, how fast you could recover from a failure. Same example of a spare wheel. If you have a spare wheel, maybe 10 minutes. If you do not have a spare wheel, maybe few hours for recovery. That's what would be required. When we talk about RPO, what it describe, it is the maximum data loss which may happen. Now, this may sound scary to business people. Their expectation would be that, hey, I want RPO of zero, RTO of zero. Can we achieve it? Yes, we can. Technically, it is possible, but are you okay to pay that much of cost to zero RPO and RTO? So whenever you have C-level discussions, that time always comes out that they need zero RPO RTO. And then as a solution architect, you start explaining them the consequences and the cost and the challenges associated. Then they may realize rationally that do we need RPO RTO of zero for every application or only for few application. I would say if a business is having any mission critical application, those applications would be requiring a RPO and RTO of zero. Otherwise, most applications should be what we call a business critical application. That is how we would be still maintaining a little less RTO. That should still be okay. By the way of discussion, let's say I am a bank. Let's say I am a bank. My question to you is, what could be my business critical application or what could be my mission critical application? Any examples? Anyone, any thoughts? If I'm a bank, if I'm a financial institution, what would be my business critical application? What could be my mission critical application? Anyone, any thoughts here? Any guesses? I have my customer facing, come on, facing banking app. What it would be? Would it be a mission critical application or would it be a business critical? Core banking, bank account, business, bring new customer to bank is business critical. I agree on that. What about my application? I have a customer facing bank application, right? Trading is a mission critical. Yeah, exactly on that. So customer facing application, I would still call it, it is a business critical, right? So that is we required to make bank business or bank business running. So that is there required. So that is business critical. Whereas when I talk about mission critical, bank have their own ways. So like bank is not just making money because they are storing your money or they are keeping your giving you loan. They are investing their money into some other debenture or investment and all. Obviously, Vijay, in that case, that would become their mission critical. So banks own internal savings or internal um, investment application would become their mission critical, because if a customer facing application is down for an hour or so, it's still okay. But if this is down, then there would be lots and lots of challenges. So RPO RTO would depend from application to application. Payment and withdrawal channel, Gloria, I would still call it a business critical because it is required for them to be do business. But even if it is down, it won't be having that much impact if their internal system of making money or investment goes down. So that's how I would put it. Last discussion on RPO and RTO here is consideration. When you are talking about RPO, you have to think that how often your data changes. If it is changing very frequently, that time I would say I need to have a shorter RPO RTO. But I have a job which is running at the very end, that time I would be saying that okay, I'm okay to run a weekly schedule on that backup, or maybe a hourly schedule, or maybe a daily schedule. So how often your data changes? If it is very frequently, you have to keep your RPO very short. If it is not changing that frequently, then you can keep your RPO higher side. And next, RTO talks about consideration is how much downtime you can handle. So some companies may have some criteria that what you want to ensure, that what is your RTO. So it purely is a business driven. And when I say business driven, it doesn't mean that for every application in the business it would have the same criteria. Criteria can be completely different from application to application. So still I am a bank, but I have a employee leave management system that may not be requiring same RPO RTO as my front end banking application. So it depends. It is application specific, not industry specific, if I have to be very clear here. Now, if disaster happens, what would be your recovery strategies? So I'm trying to explain you about four common strategies which you will find in AWS and real life also. I'll go a little bit more on the AWS side so we can talk about implementation details also, but I would put like four strategies. Now I tried to use a graphic here of a mountain. So obviously reaching here would be easier. Reaching here would be little difficult. Reaching here would be little more difficult, and reaching at the summit or the top would be obviously very difficult, and it would require more effort from you. So same thing applies here. What we are looking here is what we call low hanging fruits. Little more higher, more time required, more time and money required, and much more time and money required to reach up to four. Let me explain what these four are. So first is a backup and restore. A traditional world of performing backup and performing restore is what we could use. Second is an example called pilot light. Pilot light is a strategy. It is not a service. So don't go into AWS console and look for a service called Pilot Light. It is just a strategy which we are going to use. We'll discuss about that. Third is fully working low capacity standby. I'll explain all of them as we move forward. And then the last one we have here is a multi-site active design. So I'll explain you about all these things. When it comes to backup and restore, I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the 3-2-1 rule. If you talk to any backup expert or an industry expert in backup domain, they would say follow 3-2-1 rule. Anyone heard about 3-2-1 rule? What is 3-2-1 backup rule? If you could let me know in the chat if you heard it, fine. If not, you could say I do not know. That is completely fine. In terms of RPO, the object could be a server or a simple system to backup. It depends, Ali. So it could be just a transaction I'm looking for. It could be the whole system, or it could be, this is more related to data. Now, if your system store data into, let's say, log file and into databases and into any transactional system, then you would need to plan that. So RPO would talk about data. It could be a data generated from one system, or it could be a more complicated system. So what 3-2-1 rule says? 3-2-1 rule says that if you have to have highest chance of recovery, follow these simple steps. It says maintain at least 3 copies of your data. So 1 copy of your data is in your production system. So we say we will consider that as 1 copy. And along with that, you should be maintaining 2 more copies of your data. So that is your total 2 copies, or total 3 copies which we are maintaining. So that says maintain 3 copies of your data. Two represent here on 2 different media. Right now, different media, this mechanism is coming from little old school of computing, where we had, let's say, a tape backup, and maybe we would have a magnetic disk type of backup. But idea is, even if a tape failure happens, if a magnetic disk failure happens, we still are able to recover it. So it is how we would be deciding on how we could go ahead and ensure how my backup would be there. So maintain at least 3 copies of your data on 2 different media. And the last one says at least 1 copy off site. At least 1 copy should be away from your physical location. So you are running your offices, let's say in Dubai. Probably you should be keeping a copy of your data somewhere else, maybe in a different geography altogether. So if there is a problem in your data center in Dubai, maybe you have kept it into Oman, or from there you could recover it. That's how it should work. So it depends. So this is what we mean by 3 copies of data, 2 different media, and 1 copy offsite. Now, when this comes, the last option, it was a challenging stuff for more businesses, right? That would mean they have to maintain a data center off location. They have to ensure it is running always. They have to ensure that it is properly powered. And some companies used to ship tape backups. So shipping of tape was a very common thing I have seen in old businesses. What you should be doing, we would be taking backup, and then every day or every week or whatever your frequency is, you would physically ship those tape backup to a different location where it would be stored. So it depends. Sebastian is saying outside country could be a challenge. Yes, it could be, but it may require some cases that you may have to maintain that. So it depends. It is purely a business to business criteria. So that is what 3-2-1 rule is. So obviously, when it comes to keeping a copy offsite, then cloud becomes a new normal for all these backup solution, because cloud is a physical location which is away from your environment, and then you can keep it. And then cloud definition of 3-2-1 rule says on 2 different availability zone. This is my definition, not official AWS statement, but I say that if you are trying to recover, at least on 2 different AZs, you should be keeping your data, not just into one single AZ. All right, let's keep moving forward. So how we implement backup and restore. Now, what I'm considering here, organization who is on-prem and who is using cloud as their disaster recovery location. They are not primarily into cloud, but they are using an on-prem environment and performing backup into cloud. Now, you may consider this on-prem as a different cloud provider also, right? Or it could be a AWS region also. So it depends, but it is a different location than your secondary location. So let's say I have an on-prem environment. On this on-prem environment, I want to maintain the first copy, and I want to use AWS region as the backup destination. So I would be needing some backup software. Backup software could be provided by the operating system vendor, or you bought it from third party, doesn't matter. And once this backup software runs, what it would do, it would start performing backup. And some backup softwares are smart enough that they can use AWS as a destination. So they could directly go ahead and say, I want to store data into this S3 bucket, or I want to create a EBS snapshot. Those type of things can happen. So backup software may be aware. If a backup software is not that aware of cloud, what you could do, you could use AWS storage gateway, and that storage gateway would help this backup software in leveraging AWS services. And once this configuration is ready, you should be able to capture your backup into services like S3, EBS, EFS, FSX. These are all the places where my backup can be stored. Right. So this is one way. Either your backup software is smart enough to understand what is S3, EBS, EFS, or FSX. If it is not, you would augment it with a storage gateway software, which will ensure that you can now transfer data into this location. Right. Now, we have restore can again happen directly. So maybe if your backup software is smart enough, it could restore things if the need be. And then if let's say if on-prem is completely down, there is a power outage, there is a flood or fire, whatever, what you could also do, if you have those capabilities, you could restore that as an EC2 instance. So I have my data into S3. Maybe it was a web server. I create a web server on Amazon EC2, connect my S3 bucket to it, or mount my EBS volume or my file share, and then I could run my application from there. So restore can happen back to on-prem, or your restore can happen on Amazon EC2 instance, purely depending on your business application. So this is how it would be taken care, right? Now you can use AWS own software, which is called AWS Backup, and that can also ensure that you perform a replication to a different region altogether. So cross-region replication is always possible. Again, it depends on your legal requirement, whether you can store your data into a different region or not. But this is what architecture may look like when I'm performing a traditional backup and restore into cloud. All right. So this is first option, very low hanging fruit. Most of the time it is very easy to implement. Lot of software exists which can help you in achieving that. And then you have restore capability either in cloud, or you could restore it back to on-prem. Let's take it to the next level. Next level, we call it Pilot Lite. Pilot light is an industrial term. Not sure how many of you have seen pilot light in action, but pilot light is also just called pilot or a pilot burner. It is a small flame kept burning continuously, as in a gas stove or a furnace, to relight the main gas burner whenever necessary or desired. If I'm talking about an industrial burner, I won't go with my lighter there to spark a fire. What would happen? That this pilot light would always be burning, and when we need to make it a bigger flame, we would just pass the gases here, where would be it will, or liquid or whatever type of fuel we are using, and it will become a full blown flame. So what we have a very small footprint of flame here right now, and that small footprint of flame can be expanded to become a bigger flame for my use cases. Like here in most industrial burners, you would see a pilot light always working, and whenever you need that heater or a burner to start, it would just use that pilot light. So pilot light is a small footprint of your flame which can become bigger when you need it. How it translate into AWS, let's talk about that. Saying it again, Pilot Light is a recovery strategy. It is not a service offered by AWS. You have to implement that solution. So when I talk about Pilot Light, let's take a little example of a three-tier web app on-prem. So I have a web server, app server, and a database which is primary, and I am running this into on-premises system. Fine. What I am looking for now, I want my users to connect to it. I have used Route 53 here. You could have used any DNS service, no problem at all. And when my user want to connect to my application, they would be going to a DNS service. DNS service will give them the IP address, and now my user's browser would make connection to my web server, and now I am able to access the application. What I'm looking for, I'm looking to create a pilot light example of this into AWS. So I have to select the AWS region, and I would be maintaining a database instance there, and I would set up a replication here. Now, how you want to do this replication, it depends. You may want to perform a hourly replication, you may want to perform a asynchronous replication or synchronous replication, or you will perform backup and restore it. So it purely depends on what is your use case and what software you are using. So you would use some software, could be third party, could be database vendor specific software, and you would be creating a DB instance into AWS region here. So what you are running here 24 by 7, if your databases are running 24 by 7, the backend database where my backups are being stored or where a replication is happening is also running 24 by 7. What I'll also do, I would maintain AMIs of my web server and app server here. AMI stand for template Amazon machine images, and these AMIs would help me in creating these machines whenever I need to. So I have created this template, and if something goes wrong, I should be able to recover using these AMI. So if let's assume there is some problem with my on-prem system, this is not working as expected. Obviously, we would detect that through our health check configured into Route 53 or some other mechanism. And now I would say, okay, admin, you have to do something. Admin probably won't be manually creating it. He or she would have created an automation document, maybe a cloud formation template, maybe a Ansible runbook, maybe some Terraform template, whatever it is. And through this automation, they would go ahead and launch server from the AMI. So the process of launching would start. That would happen. In the same time, we may promote our database here to become primary. That chances are that this database was currently into read only state because it was just accepting replication. And now once my servers are ready, what I would do, I would say, okay, let me update DNS first. Let me connect my database and app server together. So I promote my database to primary. I verify that we have application running healthily. What I would be doing here, we would be then updating the DNS as it is coming. So updating of DNS is actually happening, and once my update DNS happen, it would be now pointing to the newer web server. So now I am able to to recover from it. And now my auto scaling may also come into picture. Let's say I had 10 web servers here, 8 application server. So once this all happen, initially I would start with one server, and depending on the traffic coming to it, I would start scaling my application. That's how we would be utilizing these things. So that is what we mean by a pilot light. So we had a smaller footprint. Our smaller footprint was made up of only of a database. It was made up of AMIs, and when we needed it to be expanded, we just expanded it. That's how it actually works. That is what we mean by a pilot light. All right. Is there a versioning in AMI and cost for AMI? Yes, there is a cost for that AMI, and you do not have version, but you can maintain multiple copies of that. But there is no version mechanism, but it is an independent AMI which you create, and obviously there is a cost of keeping your information in a AMI format, but it is much lower than keeping the full services running. A question from Devesh, will there not be any dynamic content on web and app server? AMI should have stale content and which will be bought up. So yes, that would be. So we haven't talked about the preparation phase, Devesh. So let's say if you applied a patch here, then that you have to apply here also. If you applied something here, you have to. So obviously it is job of an admin to maintain these AMIs. It is obviously a preparation phase which is required. I haven't talked about preparation phase for it. I have talked about the recovery phase only, but obviously you have to maintain that anything happening here is also followed here. Version update, runtime environment, you should be needing all these things, all that, right? Should we use personal AMI or AWS provided AMI as a personal configure and boot quicker? It depends, Ali. I would say if you have highly customized AMI, then obviously you have to use your own. But if you are using standard AMI, because see, if you are using highly customized AMI, it is your responsibility to keep it updated. If it is you are using a generic AMI, then AWS would be updating it with the latest patches. So I would again say it depends what customization you need and do you actually get benefited by those customization. Because if you customize it, every new version you have to maintain. On the other hand, if it was a generic AMI, it would be much easier for AWS to maintain for you. So it depends. Okay, so this is pilot light. Obviously in pilot light there is a time required because we have to launch server, promote my database, update DNS, and then auto scale. So till a time my customer would be facing issues. If I want to move forward from that, I may go with something called full working low capacity standby. What does it actually mean? I would be a little quicker here because we have a time limit. So what we are doing here, we are maintaining Route 53 and my web servers are connected. On AWS side, we also have database instance on which replication is happening. Our admin have already created automation document through which a auto scaling group has been created, and it is running one web server and one app server. I'm saying one, it could be more than that. But what is happening here, that we are not maintaining AMI, but we are having a running copy of these services. That's how we are using things here. So we can use, there is no need to launch servers from the AMI in case of disaster, because I already have a web server and app server running here. And then my app server may still be pointing to the primary database for read write operation. What I would be doing now, I may also keep on sending some traffic here. So I could say 90% traffic will be sent to web server in my on-prem, but 10% I would be sending it to my AWS services, so that this whole thing is automatically getting through testing every time. I do not have to explicitly test this, because it is always accepting 10% traffic, or maybe 5 or 15%, it depends, but it is already into running state. So this was already into running state. If a disaster strikes, what we have to do here, we are running it in low capacity. Now we have to just perform auto scaling. If a disaster strike, I can't access my database, no problem. I would first promote my DB to primary here. Once this is promoted, I do not need to update DNS, because DNS already knows about my web server. And then I have to just start pointing my auto scaling to database instances here. And I would now start auto scaling, and I may be adding more server to handle the traffic as it is coming. So that's what we would be doing with our full working low capacity standby. So it is working, but in low capacity. We have not run it at full 10 server, 20 server. Only the basic servers are running, and when we need, we would just expand it. Right. So that is my full working low capacity standby. Good option. Cost is low, still recovery time is faster. But in case application says, okay, what challenge here is that if my auto scaling takes 10 minutes to start, till 10 minutes my users would start complaining about performance or availability of my application. So I can recover faster, but there may be a performance implication. So what I could do instead of that, I could go with the last option here, which says multi-site active. Very easy to understand what we are trying to do here. In multi-site active, we have kept our auto scaling group into full capacity. We do not need to keep it into a lower capacity services. I am always running it into full capacity. Obviously there would be cost implication on that. And now my app server are talking to the database primary here in on-prem. And if something goes wrong, this service goes down on-prem, no problem at all. I have to just make this database instance primary, and that's all I need, because my AMIs are not needed, servers are already running. I have to just promote my database. DNS update is not required, because Route 53 already knows about it. And then auto scale would also not be required, because we are already running it in full capacity. So that's how these things will be working, right? So I hope this thing is clear, that multi-site active is keeping exact same service available into cloud also. And you could decide to say, I would send 50% traffic here and 50% here, or 10% here and 90%. It is purely your decision how you want to ensure this actually works. So recovery strategies, when I talk about, you may decide to go with backup and restore. If you do that, your RPO RTO will be in hours, right? It will depend on how much restore you have to perform, what is your speed of restore, how many backups you have, how many full and incremental backups you have. So there would be a lot of things you have to worry about when you are taking this into consideration. Backup and restore, RPO RTO will be in hours. If you go for cost, this is low cost solution, not too much money required to maintain that. Then if you go for pilot light, maybe you would be able to recover your application in tens of minutes. So that is still okay for most of applications, I would say. And you still have to pay extra money here, because you are keeping some services or AMIs available into your AWS environment. You are maintaining a copy, so there will be cost associated. Fully working low capacity standby, obviously you would be able to recover much faster here. It would be recovering into minutes, and you would be paying more money, because you are always running some auto scaled instances into cloud. And if you are looking for multi-site active, it is a real-time environment. Real-time recovery would happen here, but obviously that would mean you have to pay huge amount of money to maintain that environment. So that is how your strategy would look like. Now, organization may say, let's say we have 100 application, maybe 20 of them are good for backup and restore, 75 of them are good for that, two are good for that, and remaining three should be go for that. So that depends how your organization and what SLA you are looking to meet in your environment, and based on that you would be selecting different recovery strategies. So I hope it is clear and you have a better understanding on how these strategies work. It was a theoretical discussion, we haven't talked about the implementation side, but I can put some links into the resources page where you will find some implementation detail also to do this thing into your AWS environment. So in the interest of time, I'm not taking any more question. I am now going for a short break. We will be moving forward now for, sorry, a 5 minute break. And once we return, then it would be Parna who would help us in understanding incident detection and sorry, yeah, and then we will keep moving forward. So let me put a 5 minute timer and we will start again. Thank you, everyone. A question, if it is unanswered, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I would be happy to answer them. Thank you. Talk to you in 5. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is back and ready for another session. I want to highlight one thing from Sharik here. Sharik, thanks for sharing that link. If you do not know, Sharik is AWS instructor who work in the same team where I work, and he has just shared a very useful link here. So if you are looking for more detail on the implementation side, this is the best article. So please check that, where you will find all the detailed information on how these services work, what is the architecture, what are the component associated. So yeah, that would be a really useful link. Thanks, Sharik, for sharing it. Another question was on the AMI side, and there was another link shared by Sharik there. I'll show it here on the screen. So if you are looking for AMI design, here is a very detailed documentation on what should be included, what should be the frequency of update, how I should be doing that. So that is all displayed here. So it depends. You may not want to keep AMI, no problem. You may run it a Ansible workbook or anything automatically on that, but obviously it will take more time to get that thing ready. That's all depends. So if you are okay with that much time, you do not have to maintain those things. I will be keeping this Naman DevOps. I would be keeping these links into the resources section. So you should be able to grab it from there. I'm not sure if it is available here on the chat, but I'll put it onto the chat also in the next break. All right. So let me now add Parna to the discussion. Parna, hope you are here and ready for to the next section. I'll add you to stream. Let me know when you are here.
Yes, Ashish, I'm here.
Great. So thank you. And you were doing a lot of great stuff back end. Now you are in front end and delivering a session on detection. So let me go ahead and add your presentation. I'll take some breathe and let you handle it. And if you have any questions, everyone, please put them into chat. I would be happy to answer those questions while we are discussing these things. Thank you. Over to you, Parna.
Hey, hi everyone. Hope y'all can hear me. And so I'll be taking over from Ashish now. So I'm not sure whether I'll be able to reach that level of the teachings of Ashish, but I'll surely try my best. So I'll move away from the camera. So I'll let you focus on the topic that we are talking about. So give me a minute. All right. So today our focus is on threat detection. Now, before we actually talk about threat detection, we need to know a certain number of terms that all of us interchangeably use or incorrectly use, right? So all of you must have heard people discussing about vulnerability, threat, risk. Are they one and the same? No, they're not, right? They're very different, and you need to first understand each of them, right? So, what is a vulnerability? It is actually a weakness in your software or a gap in your system which is allowing potential threats to happen, right? So, threat is what? A threat is the possibility that it will exploit or make use of that weakness in your system and cause havoc. Okay. Thereafter, what is the outcome of this threat? The outcome or the unwanted response, that's going to be your risk. So what are we continuously trying to do? All these negative actions or threats that are happening or events, we are trying to prevent them. Okay. A risk is what? A risk can be a loss of data, loss of your reputation as an organization. It could be anything. Your resources could be completely wiped off. Okay, so those things are called as risk. Now let's try and think of an analogy. Okay. Now imagine that you are very open minded and you keep your door all the time open. So what is that? That's a weakness or a vulnerability in your house. You are actually welcoming all miscreants, all thieves who are probably targeting your house and they're looking for the right opportunity. So the thief over here is the threat. And what is the outcome or what could be the event that could happen? The impact of this, that could be a robbery in your house, a burglary. Okay. So hope you could relate and could understand the differences between the three. Some of the typical kind of threats which we face in traditional or on premise data centers are similar to what gets manifested even on the cloud. Okay, believe it or not, it's similar. And you can see some examples over here, right? Malware infections, or you could be having some mismanaged configurations, unusual DNS requests, or suddenly you're seeing some unwanted traffic coming in from some region of the world which never usually happens, or huge volume of traffic moving out of your system, right? So these are examples of typical threats that we have. In order to actually come to know that your system is under attack or there is something wrong, you always need a baseline. Okay, so what is a baseline? It is like a benchmark or a way of comparison. Comparison always helps us to understand things better, right? How will you come to know things are abnormal or different unless you have benchmarked or created a baseline of what it is like when things are normal or when things are in current state, right? If you don't know what is your current performance, you don't know your network latency, you will never find out the outliers. So for example, finding out and comparing will always give you more perspective. Okay, so if any of you have been following Ashish's comparison series, I'm sure before you do the comparison your concept understanding was different, but when you compare and think of it, it becomes easier to understand, right? So that's where baseline comes into the picture. It's very important while doing anomaly detection because you need to compare against something. So a very simple analogy again, right? You have a friend who's usually very grumpy, doesn't talk a lot. Okay, when you walk into the office they are probably not even looking at you, and one fine day you come in and they are like, hey, good morning, and can I bring you a coffee? And then suddenly at lunchtime they are offering your tiffin. So why are they being so nice to me? So that's where you are also benchmarking them, right? You are like, obviously they want something from me, maybe, right? So you are seeing that difference in behavior, and hence you can figure out that something is wrong. Okay, so that's where we compare baselines, and it's so important when we are doing detection. Now coming on to the AWS side of things, we have a plethora of tools and services, obviously, and you can see them all here on your screens. Where we are going to focus today is the detection part. So whole lot of services here, you can see all of them. Okay, we won't really be going deep inside each of them, but at least have a 1,000 feet overview of each, except for say config. It's like a big topic, so I won't be able to cover it too much in depth. But for the others, I'll try to give you an overview, and towards the end I'll give you a demo on the console as well. All right, so these are the services which are generally used for threat detection. Now, how have these tools been made? Obviously, there are some security best practices. Okay, so we too internally follow security best practices, and knowing those best practices, we are looking at ways to solve those problems. Now, if you can see on my screen, based on the statements, I'm sure you will be able to map it to the security service or tool that I'm going to be talking about. Okay, let me see how many of you can actually guess. So for instance, the first one, logging network traffic. Which service do you think I'm talking about? Any guesses? So logging network traffic. So I'm talking about the VPC flow log, right? Logging user and API traffic. Which service am I talking about here? Any kind of account activity or API activity or API calls. We are talking about CloudTrail. How do I gain visibility or find out some distinct patterns? Where can I analyze all this? I can use CloudWatch Insights for that, right? Coming to enhancing monitoring. Okay, so you're already able to do some monitoring using CloudWatch and CloudTrail. Okay, what if you want to increase your security posture in your organization? So you'll use for more powerful tools where you can enhance monitoring, you can do anomaly detection. Okay, automated threat detection. So who am I uh, hinting at? Any guesses? So I'm talking about guard duty, right? Managing all these findings at one central place, right? We need a central area where we have a view of everything. It just makes management easier. Also, Reacting and responding and remediation also becomes easier, especially if you have multiple accounts to manage. This is a great way. So I'm talking about the security hub here. Root cause analysis. Yes, you figured there's a problem, but you need to figure out what is causing it and stop it, right? So where can I do this root cause analysis? That's detective, right? So just like detective solves real world crime and problems and mysteries, here we have detective even in AWS. What about a service which will do the assessment and check and audit all the configuration of your systems, and it will react if something has changed? Which service am I talking about? I'm talking about AWS config here, right? And finally, we need something to continuously keep scanning all our computes, right? All our container images, all our EC2 instances, our lambdas. We want to constantly scan them, figure out if there is any vulnerability within there. What about the network reachability? Is that a issue, right? Have you opened it up to the entire world? So who can help with that, or what can help with that? We have Inspector, Amazon Inspector. Okay, so we have purpose built these tools to address each of these different scenarios or best practices. Now, assuming that you are all traditional and have not opted for the most specialized security services, so you would usually make use of CloudTrail and CloudWatch. Okay, just a little overview of people. I'm sure some people are beginners also amongst the audience, so I'm just going over CloudTrail and CloudWatch, which might be repetitive for a few of you, but this is also a very powerful tool that is used for threat detection. Okay, now what does CloudTrail do? So if you look over here, CloudTrail gives us exactly a trail, just like the name trail. Okay, so it gives you a history or traces back to the point you started. So who did it, who did what, where, when, what time, right? All those things, all those details can be found in a every I'll say every trail in your CloudWatch log. So I'll show you a sample also in the demo, right? So you find so much visibility within just one API call, and shows you so much, right from what was sent in the request, what came out in the response, all those details, which was the IAM identity that was used to make a call to that API, all those details. So this is of great value if you want to audit your system. Of course, that is one thing. Any security breaches, you want to detect that. Say somebody's gone and stopped your EC2 server. How do you backtrace and figure that out? Okay, somebody's called the stop instance. Or say you are constantly seeing this pattern of somebody attempting to log into your management console using the root credentials. Okay, how do you backtrace that? Or somebody has changed or misconfigured purposefully the security groups. Okay, so you would have to go and check that. That is also an API call, right? So it is a really great way to do troubleshooting and also to detect some threats. Along with your CloudTrail, who can help you in this? CloudWatch. Okay, so you can actually deliver this CloudTrail, that humongous amount of logs that you have. You need to analyze them. What's the point of collecting them? So you can collect them and send them all the way to CloudWatch for doing some insightful analysis, or you can send them to a S3 bucket. Okay, then zip them up, download them, and analyze using a third party tool. That's also possible. Okay, but within CloudWatch itself, you have those capabilities. So within your CloudWatch, what can you do? You can go and analyze and look at those logs, look out for certain patterns over there. You can even create something called as metric filters. Okay, so you can look out for certain API calls and create some metrics out of them. And you just having those metrics may not be sufficient to indicate and trigger of something. So you can even set off alarms using those filters. So Cloud Watch along with Cloud Trail is also a great combination. Again, I'll show you a small demo, a simple one towards then. Cloud Watch as a service gives lot of insights about IOC. Full form of IOC, indicators of compromise. Okay, some of the things will give us hints, right? So if somebody who's really talkative is very silent for a day, so what is that? That's an indicator of something being wrong with them, right? In a similar fashion, if you see certain metrics related to certain application of resources, say you can see over here few examples are given. Abnormal CPU utilization, right? So usually your utilization is say under 50%, suddenly it's shooting up above 90%. Okay, something is terribly wrong, right? Unusual outbound network traffic. Okay, so you don't have so much network traffic moving out, but suddenly one fine day you're seeing, or overnight you're seeing, there is some weird volume of traffic. Or you have some privileged user or power user accounts, and you're seeing some unusual patterns of certain APIs which you don't really see usually, you're seeing those being used. Okay, so these are some typical indicators of compromise. So when you see these things happening in your logs, you know that something is wrong. Okay, that requires some form of investigation. What can you do? So remember, you have this shared responsibility as a customer, so we are providing you ways to figure out and be notified. You should set off your alarms. Okay, configure your CloudWatch alarms using your standard metrics or your custom metrics, or like I showed you, you can create your metrics out of your CloudTrail logs as well. Okay, and once these CloudWatch alarms are created, you can do some kind of remediation notification out of them. So some of the examples of alarms that you can create are shown over here. So some common ones: root account usage. Okay, suddenly you're seeing root account usage is happening, some configuration changes happening across your resources, right? You're constantly seeing some authentication authorization failures which are happening. Okay, that is also somebody's trying to do some brute force attack on you. So these are usual things that you'll see which are indicators of compromise, and you should also set off alarms for those. Talking about logs, we have another log, VPC flow log. So we had spoken about this earlier in one of our sessions as well. So what is VPC flow logs? It is not automatically enabled. So these logs have to be enabled by you explicitly. And what does VPC flow log actually do? So it is constantly monitoring all the network IP traffic that is crossing your ENIs. Okay. ENI, elastic network interfaces. So whatever is the incoming traffic and whatever is the outgoing traffic, it is constantly logging that. You cannot deep inspect into each packet, but you can get a count of how many packets have crossover, what was the source, what was the destination. So I'll show you the format, okay, what it looks like. And the most important part is that traffic which is trying to cross over, was it successful in going through, was it rejected or allowed or accepted? You can even figure that out from a single entry of the VPC flow log. Now these VPC flow log, within your VPC you might be having a lot of ENIs, so you can actually go and enable it at the VPC or the VPN, virtual private network layer, at the subnet layer, or at a very specific. Okay, so you can keep on getting more and more granular as you want. So you can see that at any of these stages you can go and turn it on. Where will you collect it? Obviously you are sourcing a lot of logs over here, you need some place to store it. So two possibilities again: CloudWatch, and you can go and analyze it in CloudWatch Insights, which I'll show you as well. Or you can store them in S3 durably and later on download them and do some analysis on them. That's also possible. What does your VPC flow log actually look like? So this is the nice tabular fashion in which you can see, you can get so much insights from this one record. You can actually see the account number, the ENI ID, the source, the destination, okay, the port numbers, how many packets have crossed over, how many bytes. And this one out here, the action is very important. Okay, so whether it was able to get through. So for example, if there's a deny, there was some network firewall rule, say a security group or say a knackle, which has prevented the traffic to get through. Okay, if actually you wanted the traffic to get through and every time it's getting denied, that's a hint for you that you have misconfigured something over there, right? So and you can go and fix that up. Now these were our I will say the most basic logs that you can use. If you want to go for more specialized services, then you have this little group of threat detection security services which you have here. Okay, and a few of them work great together, like guard duty, your detective, and security hub generally work really well together, and they give you kind of a whole picture. Macy is also there, so that is more to do with sensitive data detection. And inspector, so if you have your operating systems or your code packages and which have some vulnerability within them, and you need to scan them, or scan your lambda functions, or scan continuously any versions of images, container images that you're constantly uploading to say your registry, the ECR, and you want to check, is there a problem, is there a data leak in there, have you got some credentials that you've hard coded in the code, so it can actually detect that as well, or you've not applied a patch properly. So inspector is just like the name says, right? It's constantly inspecting and ensuring that you're up to date. How does it do that up to date in the sense? So there is something called a CVE. Okay, so it's basically an organization. Okay, so CVE is common vulnerabilities and exposure. Okay, so there is a database which is like a public catalog of the most common cyber attacks, and an inspector is constantly matching and mapping and checking that are you up to date with those. Okay, so is your scanning appropriate? It will go and check your packages, and it will see that none of the threats which have been mentioned under CVE, those are going to affect you or not. Okay, so I'll give you findings accordingly. So I'll show you again on the console what it looks like. So quickly I'll go run through each of them. Guard duty. Okay, first of all, guard duty, like you can see like whole lot of CCTV cameras. If you go into a government area or something, or a very private area, and if you know what a sentry is or a border patrol, they are constantly tracking, okay, what's happening at the border, right? So you can think of guard duty in that way. So it is constantly monitoring and protecting your accounts. Okay, and it's using intelligence to do that. So there is AIML involved. Okay, so it's machine learning involved, where it's looking from sources of data. So there are various sources of data that guard duty looks like. So it's looking at your VPC flow logs, it's looking at your DNS logs, it's looking at your cloud trail, it's looking even at your S3 events, both management and your object API events, your EKS audit logs, and all of these, right? It's constantly looking at that, and it's figuring out some kind of suspicious or out of the common behaviors. What is the outcome of this? So it will give you findings. So it will look something like this. So this is what it looks like. I'll show you on the console as well. So it will show you all these findings, and it will give you exactly for each finding, it will give you the priority level. So it could be high, medium, or low. Low is basically it has blocked off some kind of potential problem. Medium is where it is seeing a very high risk of your say your instance which is going to be compromised because of the activity that you are constantly seeing. And high risk is actually probably your instance is already compromised, right, and it is being used for some unauthorized action. So that is generally the way it will categorize, and you can see as soon as you click on a finding, okay, it will show all the details of that finding and the related resources, which is called the metadata of that finding. Okay, there's also going to be a little clickable investigate with detective. Okay, so once you click there, it will take you to detective, and detective will help you to analyze and find the root cause. So this is what it looks like. So the foundational data sources from where data guard duty actually picks up. Okay, where is it actually looking for this information? It's looking for it from VPC flow logs, DNS logs, the cloud trail events. Okay, the S3 data plane events, EKS control plane events. It's picking up all this, constantly monitoring it. Remember, when this data moves from these logs to guard duty, it goes in an encrypted fashion, and guard duty picks and chooses which fields to analyze and profile on, and after that it gets rid of those logs, it doesn't store it. what are the typical types you'll find? Some examples you can see. So your instance has been being used for doing some crypto mining operations, some command and control activity that you're seeing there, right? So if you're not aware of these terms, I would suggest that you can just go and search it and see. Okay. Some anomaly detection using ML. So like I said, some changing unusual patterns when you match it to your baseline, right? So you're seeing constantly instance being stopped and started, things like that. Configurations are being changed, unusual amount of volume of traffic. All these are unusual patterns, right? So that can be detected using ML. And finally, like I said, you'll get three of these: high, medium, low ranking based on your findings. Outcome, again, you can collate all these findings and get a central view in security hub, and within security hub you can actually configure how to remediate it downstream, or connect it to something like event bridge, if some of you are aware of. So point to point integration service, event bridge, so it collects events from a producer, matches against rules, and sends it out to some targets, okay, and which will downstream do something else. Okay, that could also be a response or remediation. Or you can go and analyze it in detective. So detective gives you a pattern. So now coming to detective, okay, so say you found or you got a lot of findings. Okay, now what do you do with them? So, detective, just like the name suggests, it will help you to analyze, it will help you to correlate all your findings. There could be multiple findings, maybe they are related in some way, right? Which are the resources associated with it? You will have to try and get the entire picture. So, that correlation part of it, it creates something called as a correlation graph for you, okay, and you can visualize things also over there. So again, mapping it to our real life. So when a detective, you've seen in movies and all, where what are they doing when they're finding clues? They are linking things together, okay, and then discovering what could be the main cause. Okay, for example, again, real life scenario. Okay, I'm trying to bring in there. Okay, so you work in a company, and there is a junior of yours who is eyeing your position for long. Okay, you have a great relationship with your manager, everything is going good. Okay, that's your baseline. Suddenly one fine day you see that there's a pattern of 2 days. Your manager, who is usually very nice to you, asks you to go home early, is constantly giving you a lot of workload. Okay, every day expecting you to stay beyond work hours. So you're wondering what's wrong with this person now. So you're wondering, and 2 days pass by, and suddenly you meet the junior who's passing you by on the corridor, and you have a whole lot of colleagues there, and he says, "Hey, congratulations! I heard you're switching your job." And you're like wondering that, yes, I was searching for doing some job hunting. How does this fellow know? And you are trying to backtrace in your mind. Okay, how is all this related? This odd behavior of the manager, this junior who never talked to you and who wanted. And then you backtrace that, yes, this junior's cousin I met at a party last week, and I spoke to her because she's in HR, and I told her that, do you have any opportunities? So she must have told him, and he must have got this idea, this is a great opportunity for me, so let me go and tell his boss. And that's how everything is connected, right? So in a similar fashion, coming back to AWS, a detective also tries to correlate things. Okay, it is going to organize data from various parties, like I said, from CloudTrail, VPC, flow logs. Even your guard duty findings are going to be collected and aggregated there. Okay, and then you can create an analysis, or it will automatically create a graph model for you. It will do that as well. And you can analyze it further. You can go into security hub also. In your detective, it will also show you related findings. Okay, so maybe you are just analyzing one finding, but if you look at that instance, probably it's involved in some other findings also. That will help you to figure out the cause as well. So something like this, okay, a behavior. So this is called as a behavioral graph, or a model that under the scenes that a detective does for you. So there's one finding. So this is one finding, so which involved a user. The user assumed a role, and probably use CLI to get in. Okay, and then you're seeing there's another second finding there also, the same role was used. Okay, so it could be the same user. And what did the user do? Probably used unblocked public IP address to connect to a instance and do some malicious thing. So it can create this graph for you. Okay, additionally, what else can your detective do? So it also has some extra features. Okay, so it helps you to do some detective or investigative work with respect to S3 also. So some specialized things, exactly, you come to know details about who had created the bucket, when was it created, who made it public. Okay, somebody has intentionally gone and made it public. Okay, if certain say management level APIs have been invoked. Okay, so who was probably responsible. So you can see a whole lot of connected information as well, also related to your say DNS related findings as well. Okay, so something like some very low reputation domain names have been invoked. Okay, so you're wondering who's doing that. Okay, something is up. So these are the things usually that detective helps you with. Then there's Macy. So say you're storing some sensitive information. So when I say sensitive information detection, it is PII data. So personal identifiable information. So that could be your full name, it could be your passport number, it could be actually your date of birth, it could be your mobile number. All this is private information which you don't want it to go out in the public. But accidentally say you have some data there, so you want to analyze and make sure that it was not done accidentally. So Macy will help you to discover that. Okay, so you can turn on this capability. So what will it do? It will automatically go in and scan all your buckets. Okay, you can create what you call as jobs. You can even specify what kind of fields you're definitely looking out for. So there is an option to include or exclude some data identifiers. Okay, so you can see in the screenshot there are some typical identifiers like the address, credentials, driver's license. So you can choose to include or exclude also. Okay, that is also possible. So these are managed ones, so these are managed by AWS. You can go ahead and create your own custom ones as well. Okay, so certain kinds of data you definitely consider it as private information that should not be there, which is possibly not in the list of managed ones. So you can do custom also. And obviously constantly Macy is evolving, and there are a lot of machine learning enhancements which have been added, which find it easier to detect full names and passport numbers or mailing addresses, for example, right? Or even addresses such as zip codes, postcodes. So it's constantly evolving. Under the hood, what is there? There's again a machine learning model. Okay, coming to what other things we can do for detection, there is inspector. Okay, so just like the inspector that we spoke about, or inspector does what? It is constantly checking, auditing whether things are in place, right? Is there a gap? Is there a weakness in the system? So remember I spoke about vulnerability at the beginning. What is that? That's a weakness in your software or your system that can be exploited. So we should try our best to get rid of those as soon as possible. So this is where inspector helps us out. Okay, so what is inspector doing? It can scan our container images. Okay, it can every time you are pushing a new image to your elastic container registry, it can trigger off a new scan. Every time you are going and adding a patch to your EC2 instance, or you're uploading some software. Okay, even your programming packages which are there installed on your EC2 instance, right? You are updating it, upgrading it, it will trigger off a scan. Okay, and it will constantly keep on analyzing how is it mapping it, how is it considering it a finding or a threat, because it matches it to the current list of the CVE database. So I told you what is CVE, common vulnerabilities and exposure database, which constantly gets updated with the latest cyber attack variables which are there in the market. So you cannot keep that in mind, right? But this is always up to date, and inspector is making use of this when it is trying to scan your instances, your ECR repository, the image, the lambda functions. It is doing all those scans. What does it do after the scan? So what are the possibilities? Of course, you can send it to a central location, which is your security hub. You can just generate reports and store it in your S3 buckets, which probably will be further analyzed by your security team. And then again, we have Event Bridge. Okay, so that's also there. So that's more towards the remediation or response part of it. So what all things can you do? So like I said, it can scan your EC2 instance. There are two types of findings or scans that happen over here. One is your network reachability scanning. Okay, so this is generally trying to scan and determine whether instances UDP or TCP ports are reachable from your VPC edges, such as internet gateway, VPC peering, or VPN. Okay, or you've opened out a port right to the world. Right, it might be on purpose because it's a web server. That's also possible, and you can suppress those findings if you think it's legitimate. That's possible. One thing to note here is, in order to do this scan for network reachability, you do not require any agent sitting there. However, for the second type of scan, where it's scanning the packages, meaning your programming code packages or say your operating system, you do need the SSM agent. Okay, it has to be a managed instance, else you cannot do the package vulnerability check. Okay, that is the requirement. So I told you that we do the network reachability check. This happens every 24 hours. How does inspector know what kind of software is installed? So it is talking to your system manager. So remember the system manager. Okay, the system manager has an inventory or a stock of all the fleet of instances that it's managing, right? It also has an inventory of all the software that is installed on those instances. So, using the system manager's inventory information, your inspector is actually able to know what is actually there within those EC2 instance, and then using your CVE database, like I said, at that point of time, it is going to check whether everything is in place or no. In terms of your images, okay, your container images which are stored in say your private registry, you can do it manually, okay, which is called as basic scanning. Whenever you are uploading a new version of the image or a new image, you can go and trigger off a scan. This is free, or by default there is enhanced monitoring. So ideally, as an organization, you should automate things. We know operational excellence pillar, right? In the well architected framework, we should automate things. What if somebody forgets to do the scan? Right, we can't rely on that. So enhanced scanning is what? It will continuously do that. Okay, it will identify any vulnerabilities in the operating system, programming languages, and it's doing this at real time. Okay, now as I said, you can do it at your own time, meaning it's literally push button, as in you can trigger off the scan when you want it or let it run automatically. Remember, when it's doing automatically, it is picking up the latest version of CVEs while it's doing up. Okay, it is that powerful. You'll notice that in case of your inspector, even within the image, container image, if somebody, any of you would have created say a Docker image, you know that's made up of multiple layers, right? It can exactly point out even which layer is the problem causing one. So it is container aware, and it can point out layer by layer also whether there is any criticality. You can actually include, have like a administrative account and include other accounts also that you need scanned. So those capabilities are there, and you have to add those member accounts. So you can go into say account management over here. Sorry, let me just pick up a darker color. Okay, so you can go into account management and do that. Then you can go into the overview, into the dashboard, and you can see all the accounts which are being scanned, how many instances are being scanned, how many ECR repositories, how many of those findings are actually critical. Obviously we get medium and low criticalities also, but on the dashboard you see the critical ones and you can drill down. So right on the summary page, you can see each of the package names and which of them have some issues related. You can do those findings and look by vulnerability, by instance, by account. You can actually drill down and filter based on that as well. Now, remember, I told you that you need a SSM agent sitting on those EC2 instance in order for inspector to actually do a package scan. Okay, if it's unmanaged, like you see over here, okay, this is not managed, then the scanning will not work. So it says not scanning here. Okay, it's scanning only for the remaining 5 because you need the SSM agent sitting there. All your findings will show up like this, so you can see exactly the CVE number, also finding number is also there, so details about this you can see. And there is a score. Okay, so this is like your security posture score, or inspector also gives you a score based on which you will come to know that how critical the issue is. Details can be seen on the right. Okay, so it will exactly mark out all those information. Finally, we have our security hub. Okay, so all these findings which we are collecting from different places, we need a central place to have a look at it and analyze it, possibly trigger of some remediation and response. Okay, so security hub is a good place for that. Now security hub not only collects from various sources, so you can see all these various sources that it's collecting from. Okay, apart from that, there are some security standards in the industries which you can enable. Okay, things like CIS standards or PCI DSS standards. Okay, so these are some security standards. So CIS is a Center of Internet Security, PCI is Payment Credit Card Industry and Data Security Standards. Okay, so there are a couple of them which you can enable, so and it is going to check your security posture. Okay, so you kept hearing me say security posture, security posture. Okay, so now again, analogy. Okay, so remember, all of us have our postures, right? So we always differentiate between bad posture and good posture. If you don't maintain a good posture, what happens? The outcome is we are going to have neck pain or we are going to have back pain. Okay, so that is a problem. Okay, this is the problem which happens if you have a bad posture. In a similar way, we have to constantly evaluate our security posture of our workloads. Okay, so over here you can see that within your security hub, okay, few of them like the AWS foundation best practices, these are enabled by default, so it is constantly going and scanning through your resources in all your accounts. Okay, if you have organization enabled, it will do that even for the member accounts. Okay, if you have enabled your PCI DSS, it will do for that, and it is showing you a security score. Looking at that security score, you can analyze how good you are, right? Okay, how good you are positioned. You can look at your results and it will identify certain gap areas for you. Okay, so you can see there are over 200 plus automated checks, so these are very important, right? Somebody has to inform you there's something wrong. Okay, until someone informs you, you won't take action. Okay, so these are all based on best practices, so industry best practices. So that is one great feature of your security hub. So in a nutshell, you can see that in Security Hub, what all can you get? You can get your inbuilt Security Hub standard checks, which will analyze all your resources. Okay, so I have just put in some resources. It's not that there are many more. Okay, there are many more. You can get all the findings from your guard duty. You get all your findings from Macy, from inspector, even from your detective at one central point. And finally, over there, you can decide how to take action. Some insights, extra insights that you get in Security Hub look like this. Okay, so these are some examples. So which resources have the most findings, which is critical, right? So you know which is the problem causing one. Okay, are there any S3 buckets which are with public permissions? Okay, are there any AMIs which have some problems in it? Suspicious principles or identities which I am users or roles which are causing some suspicious behavior. So all these are certain types of insights which also you get within Security Hub. Also, apart from that, it is good to know that if you've heard about trusted advisor, just like your well architected framework, also has some pillars or categories it assesses your account around. Okay, right? Cost optimization, security, fault tolerance, your quotas, right? So what how does it help over here? So security advisors actually sending out some findings to Security Hub, and Security Hub also interacts with trusted advisor and sends some information there, so both of them are talking to each other bidirectionally. Also AWS health, so AWS health is a service which is concerned with looking at the overall health of the different services that AWS is running for you. Okay, if some service is getting impacted on the AWS side, you would want to know how it will impact your workloads as well. Okay, so this AWS health service also can send you some kind of messages and notifications of some findings. Okay, and these also can be aggregated in Security Hub. Okay, so it's quite powerful. So now I'll go on to the demo. I spoke quite a bit. I think it'll be good to see all these things. So just give me a moment. Sorry if I'm not looking at the chat because there are a whole lot of things to cover. In case you have some questions which I could not answer now, you could probably ping me and over LinkedIn, and I can get back to you. Okay, so I have just simulated something. Just give me a moment. I don't really have malware on my system, but this is just a simulation. And thanks to some really smart colleagues in AWS, so this is a test simulation of our guard duty. And you can see over here. Okay, so guard duty has been enabled over here, and this is the summary, and it's showing you on a particular date. That was the date in which I ran the simulation, so it's showing all this over here. And what are the type of findings? So there is one problem maker over here. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so there is a problem maker over here which seems to be having 7 findings. So you can go over here and you can look at all the different types of findings here. Okay, so the first two are related to malware. So for doing the malware scans, you have to go in, actually go and enable malware protection. That is one another feature, extra feature of guard duty, which I forgot to mention earlier. Okay, so it can actually go and detect that within your EC2 instances as well as your container. So you have to enable it over here. So the first two, as you can see, it has detected some malware and it is showing you a lot of details over here. So you can exactly see the details. Okay, so I obviously don't have malware there. There is a ICAR test file, which is a mock virus or a malware file. It is not a real virus, but it has spotted that. So usually you can use these ICAR test files to mock up some situation. Okay, so it's detected it. It is giving you a lot of overview and metadata information. Okay, about see over here, it is founded in a cluster. So I have a ECS cluster running here, and it is founded there. Okay, so all these details you can have a look over here. Okay, there is a Docker container running there. Okay, which image is it using, etc., which is the actual instance or the cluster instance where it spotted it. Okay, all these details you can find here. Similarly, you can see others also. Say there was a RDP brute force attack. This has been marked as low. Okay, and it's telling you that this particular IP address is performing RDP brute force attacks against this particular instance. Okay, and several others as well. Okay, for some reason I'm not able to. Okay, I can scroll down now. So it has detected some kind of efforts to actually trying to connect to some Bitcoin related activity. It's connecting to some spurious domains. Okay, so that has been spotted in this particular instance. So you can see this is a problematic one, and you can go in and analyze. Okay, so in order to do analysis, you can click on investigate with detective. Okay, so that I'll show you, but before that I'll tell you some other things. So you should ideally go and turn on S3 protection also. What this helps you to do is, besides your normal data plane trails that you're collecting in your cloud trail already, this will give you some enhanced monitoring also. Okay, so this is good to turn on. Similarly, you can turn this on for your EKS audit logs. Okay, these I have not turned it on, but you can go and turn these on as well. There is one important feature called as list management. So you can maintain a list of IP addresses which you trust, and similarly a list of IP addresses that you do not trust. So for example, over here I have a file in which is my bad IP list. So this, any request coming in or any traffic it detects with this particular IP address, it is just a file that I have just to show you all, then it is going to actually trigger off a finding. Okay, so currently it is inactive, but I can go and make it active. All I have to do over here and activate it. Okay, so you can have both trusted IP list as well as threat IP list. So this is a very useful feature. uh, Going back to findings, so If I go to this one, okay, and now I want to investigate with detective. How should I do it? So if I click over here, you can see these options. Okay, so say I'll go into this instance, it will take me to detective. Okay, so over here you can see information about that particular instance. Now this particular instance is actually involved in other findings as well, so this is called as correlation, right? You can figure out that this is a problematic one, it has some other findings will it too. You can detect the actual volume, VPC flow volume also, so it's showing you inbound, outbound, or if you're seeing some unusual patterns which are not there. So remember, this is currently scoped meaning this is only on 10th of August. Okay, so it, you can scope it for 24 hours period. You cannot scope for 3 days at a time. If you go in here, you can give a scope. If I change this, okay, say I change it to say second, so you can see that you can change that. Oh, sorry, not this. I think in another place you can scope it only for 24 hours. I think in inspector. So my bad. So here you are able to change the scope. So currently I'm looking at only 1 day because that was the day I was doing the testing. So it's showing all the inbound and outbound traffic. Okay, so all this information, correlated information, you can see here. Any the IP address associated with this instance. Another interesting part, I think you can see here. There was a part where you could see the actual geographies from where those instance. Yeah, this one. I'm just wondering why it's not showing now. Let me change the date. Hopefully it will show. Okay. Still it's not showing me. Okay. So generally it will show you from where it found most of the requests coming in from. Okay. So if it's from a very unusual place, okay, which usually you don't see, then you know there's a problem here. Okay. So it gives you a lot of information about that as well. Any number of successful calls, you can see there will be some failed calls. So in this case, there wasn't, but that also can be figured out. Okay, in detective you can go and search. Okay, you can search based on say your EC2 instance. Okay, so if I search for a particular instance, say this particular instance, okay, so it can find out findings related to that over here. Okay, so that is possible based on instance, or I could find based on IP address, that's also possible. So you can do the findings over here. You can see all the summary, in the sense you can actually see roles and users with the most API call volumes. You can get a whole picture out here. Okay, how many failures, how many successes. Okay, any EC2 instance with the most traffic volumes, those you can see. Okay, any clusters over here which are available. Okay, so all this information you can see here. Okay, this is, yeah, this was the point actually, which is only 24 hours, not that one. So this was, if I update it, then I think it will show you. Yeah, so you can see over here, you can see from different geographies. Okay, now over here also you can manage multiple accounts. You can mine is a single account, but you can add other member accounts also, that is possible. Okay, in general, okay, so you can have administrator privileges, or you could just be a member, so you can do those. um, yeah, that's about it. Let me show you about security hub now. Okay, so this is security hub. You can see this is the summary of the security hub, and it's showing these two standards are currently enabled. So it's analyzed and given us a score of 75%. Okay, you can enable other standards. Okay, if you enable them, then it will start mapping and checking against those also. And then you can go and see, right? You can see your viewed the results. Okay, and it will give you exactly the details over here. Okay, MFA, I have not enabled it for the root user, so that's why it's marked it as critical. Okay, uh, a particular instance is allowing SSH from the entire internet, so that's also a problem. Okay, so it's showing you everything at one single place, so you can have a look at the standards over here. Okay, you can go and filter your findings here as well, or if in the summary, if you want to see from other sources, so notice over here, if I go to the bottom. Okay, so these are the different insights which I was telling you. Okay, so overall insights, it's giving you all the findings based on region. Okay, which S3 buckets had the most findings, EC2 instance with the most findings, it'll give you all those insights. And finally over here, you can see whatever it's integrated with, say guard duty and inspector currently, it is showing you those details. So I have not enabled Macy for this account, so it has no findings. But if we say go to our inspector console. Okay, so this particular region doesn't have much things on it, so it's, you can see, so it did not scan the other three. Why? If you remember, I told you, because they were unmanaged, so it has just scanned one of them. And you can see when was the last scan, what were the findings. So you can go back here. So if I go back here, okay, you can see all the findings over here. And say the most common one which most people will understand is port 22 is reachable, and you can see the details. Okay, it is associated with this particular instance, you can see that. So you can see based on instance, container image, lambda function, that also you can see. So over here, I don't have any lambda functions here, I'll show it to you in another account. Or you can go to all findings here, and one by one you can just go and click and look at the details. So here you can see the CVE against which it has found problems. Okay, and the details are all mentioned over here. Okay, the score which I was showing you, this is the score. Okay, so I have another account also where there are more details in inspector. So over here, this is in another region. If I just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so here I have lambda functions also, you can see. So it has scanned certain lambda functions, but not the others, because they have been inactive for more than 90 days. So if it's inactive for more than 90 days, it doesn't do a scan. I have a repository also where it's done a scan. You can see I don't have any critical ones, but it does have some findings. Okay, so in general, remember, it does package scans and network reachability. But if I want to enable for lambda scans, then I'll have to go to the settings and I'll have to turn it on. Okay, so I think here some place, or was it here, I think, yeah, here. So you have to go in and say activate, and you can see you can scan all of them, or you can be very specific. So I'm scanning everything actually, EC2 ECR, as well as I'm doing a packet scan plus code scan. So I said it can also look into your code and tell you if there are some potential security gaps there also, say data leaks or credentials exposed, credentials in plain text, passwords in plain text. It can even give you details of that. So if I go to my instances, okay, so one of them it's monitoring, has it found any are there any findings, let me see. Okay, so it has some findings related to network reachability, you can see. So in both of them, actually it's a web server, so frankly it is not really a finding. So I can create something called as a suppression rule, so that future it won't be shown to me. So I can be very specific, I say I'm just giving test. Okay, and I can create a rule, okay, related to say a instance ID or of a particular instance type. I can give that, and so next time what will happen, it will suppress it. So I can create a rule and do that, so that next time it does not find it and show me, because it is on purpose that I've opened it up. In case of this one, see, it's found it a code vulnerability in the lambda function. If you open it up, okay, user inputs must be sanitized before they are logged. So basically, possibly there is data which could be sensitive data, which I'm directly putting it to the log. That's why it's giving me this. Okay, so a lot of insights you can find here. You can create your suppression rules here also, like I said. right from there, or I can create here also. Okay, and I'll have to exactly say suppression rule related to a instance, related to a tag, related to a image. Okay, so those will not land up showing in the findings. ECR. Okay, so here recommended is the scan should happen all the time. Okay, of course you can say that I want to scan only for 180 days after a new version has come in, or 30 days after a new version, but it is always better to do a lifetime setting. Okay, so yeah, I think more or less I've shown this to you. Let anything else I wanted to show. Mm, yeah, this is it. Even on the summary page you can see all these things.
Hey Parna, I'm
And
being devil's advocate here, but in the interest
yeah.
of time, we have
Yeah,
10:55 and Laura is waiting at very
I'm
early in the
so
morning.
sorry, Laura.
No, no,
Yeah,
completely okay. It is too
yeah,
many topics there, but you
yeah,
tried to cover a lot of them. Thanks for that. But
sure,
hopefully, like we may have to break it into another session because there are so many topics there.
sure. So I'll probably
Okay.
show something next week also.
Yeah,
Okay,
we can obviously plan for it, but obviously we have a guest and
yeah,
we should be a little respectful of their time. It's too early,
definitely.
and thanks for that. But I'll now add Laura to the screen share, and Parna, obviously you can also be there if you have any questions or anything. Do not be hesitant at all. But thanks for that, and that was very interesting to know about how these services work. I was
Yeah,
getting some comments in the chat that these are too many services. I agree on that. So there are too many. I don't
yeah,
expect that you become like an expert in one day. You
yeah,
have to look for what you are looking. What is your expectation, or what is the outcome you are looking for? Are you looking for vulnerability scanning? Are you looking for network filtering? And based on that, you have to figure out which service will well suit you. So yes, it is a challenge. Too many services of them, and AWS is not stopping. They are adding more feature and more services. So it is a challenge. But thanks for that, Parna. It was interesting. I picked a few analogies also, so I would be using those also in my presentation. Thanks for that.
okay. Thank you so much. And sorry, everybody, I lost track of time.
No, it
Sorry
happens.
to
It
Laura.
happens.
Yeah.
Let me add Laura to screen now. Hey, Laura, how are
Good
you?
Hey,
morning.
Laura.
Hey,
Morning.
well done, Parna. I enjoyed your talk. I love hearing you talk, and Ashish too.
You look
Yeah,
super
it
fresh.
was great. So we are now moving to our next section, which is a day in the life of Amazonian, and we have Laura Smith with us. Laura is a technical account manager. So Laura, if you could help us in telling about yourself, and then we will obviously go with the question and answers.
Sure. Yeah. I've been an information technologist for about 25 years now. Doesn't seem possible, but it's truly that long. I just previous to AWS, I was mostly focused in development and administration of enterprise systems, ERP systems, or integration tier level stuff as well. Some database admin, and I've been with AWS for about a year now. So I work from home here in my office, and let's see, I'm trying to think. I do get to travel once in a while as a technical account manager to visit customers on site, or I've helped at a couple conferences doing a game day.
Hmm.
So it's always different each day as a technical account manager for sure. Outside of work, I love to do outdoor activities. As Parna knows, I'm a wildlife photographer as well, so I enjoy
Wow.
going out photographing
A very good
owls
one.
and yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, heading out to Yellowstone in a couple of weeks actually to photograph some of the mammals there. So really excited about that as well. So, but of course, I love tech as well, and so yeah, I always looking to learn some new things.
That's great, and thanks for your time. What time it is at your place as of now? Early morning?
Yeah, it's 6 a.m. right now, so it's
Wow,
really
you
yeah,
were there from last 2 hours, so thanks for that.
Thank you
Now,
so
yeah,
much, Laura.
I want to talk
yeah.
about your first year experience of AWS first, and then we'll talk about technical account manager, how it
Yeah.
feels.
How it feels at AWS so far? Is that the
Yeah.
question, Ashish? It's been really great. It's been a whirlwind. Parn and I both kind of started together with the She Builds program, what Cloud Up
Mhm.
for Her. And so the cloud was brand new to me as of January 2022. I decided I was ready for a change. I was ready to, expand my horizons and challenge myself. And being with AWS has been incredible. I've met so many talented people like yourselves who just want to learn and grow and do good things for customers, which just resonates with me. So there's just so many resources available to continually to learn, as you both know. It's part of our roles is to continue to learn and share that with customers and share with other people within AWS as well, which I love doing that as much as I can.
So I have a question, Laura. So the role that you did before becoming a TAM, was it anyways related to your TAM role, or do you think that actually accelerated why you could get into AWS, or it's completely different? So most people would like to know, do I need a background in something before I can actually go and apply there? If you could tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So with a technical account manager, one of the things they're looking for is technical breadth and depth, which is one of the things I had. So you're exposed to a wide variety of information technology topics like, compute or storage or etc., whatever it might be. For me, I was mostly focused on developer, as a developer and admin. So I was able to touch base on a lot of different areas. So technical breadth. If you're looking to be a technical account manager and only have focus in small areas, start looking at other things you've not yet been exposed to. That's my best guide. In depth, having a depth of understanding in specific topics also is very advantageous as a technical account manager. And I think with all AWS roles as well, I could be wrong with your particular roles, Ashish and Parna, but you have the opportunity to specialize also. So if something really interests you, you can then focus your efforts in there as well and become specialized and help in that particular area or areas, whatever your passions are, within AWS itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, if I talk about your day in the life, like what are the top three things you do on a day-to-day basis, Laura?
So I guess number one is being communicating with customers. So
Hmm.
as a technical account manager, I'm assigned multiple customers. So I'm assisting them with their current workloads they already have in AWS, whether it be optimizing their workloads or maybe they have an existing workload they want to enhance or modernize perhaps. So I assist with some of those types of things. So working with customers is definitely a key thing. And then also working internally as well with the teams that we kind of work in clusters within the team. So we're networking internally and learning from others as well. Sometimes we're assisting other colleagues, customers as well, depending upon our skill sets. I'm not quite there yet myself. I don't think I'm not specialized, but some other of my colleagues are very specialized, and it's also networking, learning the people in different areas, so that when your customer comes to you with a problem or a need to develop a new workload, you know where to look for those answers and to bring those resources in. So networking is really key in my role as well.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So solution architects come before they actually start running their workloads on AWS, and the TAMs come thereafter, right? So you are actually helping them optimize and enhance and add features. Is that the difference? Because
Sometimes,
most people,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so in my role, I work closely with an account manager and also a solutions architect. Each customer that we support has all three of us, and sometimes other people
Okay.
as well, or sometimes multiple TAMs for that matter,
Okay.
depending upon geographic distribution. For example, you might have a TAM in India, you might have a TAM in the US, depending upon the
Hmm.
actual needs and size of the customer. So a solutions architect associate on this team that I'm part of normally would help out with new workloads that need to be developed or modernization at some time. So they have more of the real technical skills, and they too again have a great network as well. So as a TAM, you're not developing solutions for the customer. You might be guiding them based on your knowledge of different things, but you're not actually physically building anything per se for them. So
Okay. That's clear.
Okay.
mhm.
And there is confusion between an account manager and a technical account manager. What could be the differentiating factors?
Sometimes the lines kind of cross, as you guys know, with all kinds of roles, right? Y'all kind of fill in. But account managers themselves work more closely with the C-suite of customers. They're looking more from kind of some kind of pricing type things, contracts, things of that nature. But again, we all kind of work together. So a technical account manager is more looking for technical details for the customer's needs and aligning resources within AWS to help educate the customers on specific topics, specific services, whatever it might be. So I can't say exactly what account manager does because sometimes they do things on their own accord that we're not
Yeah.
really part of per se. But as an enterprise a customer, the account team, meaning the account manager, the solutions architect, and the TAM, we meet at least once a week or multiple times during the week to kind of level set of what's going on with the customer. Maybe the account manager has had some meetings and learned about some specific things that are important to them. And so then we'll start those discussions internally about aligning resources that they need to be successful and have business outcomes as soon as possible when they need from the customer.
Right.
And if you could give us example of like what kind of request customer give to you or when they reach
Hmm.
out to you, like what could be examples of things. Let's say I want to re-architect something, or I have a technical issue, or support is not listening to me. What could be those things?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think of your questions, multifaceted there with different points. So in terms of customer engagement, we you normally have regular reoccurring meetings with the customer.
Hmm.
Sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, depending upon the customer's needs and how fast they're moving towards modernization or other initiatives. Um, so we get all kinds of questions. It could be that they do have a potential problem, an issue with AWS, a service that's not performing properly, or maybe it's a threat detection Parna, and so they will actually open a case with the support team. And then, as a technical account manager, we'll make sure that that case is indeed engaged as soon as possible. Customer has resolution. Maybe things aren't tracking as fast as they need them to be, so then we might escalate further to get other people involved to make sure those needs are met. Otherwise, for new workloads and things, Ashish, again, we have projects. Working with the customer, you understand as you work with a customer, you start to understand their workloads, what's important to them, projects on a regular basis you're involved in. And so we just have that constant communication with the customer to keep abreast of what's important to them and what things they need assistance with, essentially. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And
Okay.
on the same line, I have another question. Sorry, Parna, I have too many questions for Laura,
Oh,
so I'm
that's
not
fine.
trying to. So,
I'm happy
uh,
to listen.
what do you have any commercial targets, commercial KPIs in terms of
Hmm.
account?
Not that I'm aware of per se. No, I think it's pretty open ended. Each customer is unique in terms of their needs. There's no KPIs per se in terms of the customer itself. As a TAM, though, there are requirements per se in terms of continuing education.
Hmm.
Always learn and be
Hmm.
curious, as you guys know. So certifications are required. Initially, when I hired on as a TAM, there was no requirements for a certification. I was working on the Solutions Architect Associate with the BISA team actually when I was hired with AWS. But it's not required initially. So if you're a person that's new to the cloud and looking to get into a role at AWS, you don't necessarily need a certain certifications to start, but they will be required as you continue on with your AWS journey to stay abreast.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
Going on the same question line, like, so how your KPIs are evaluated at the end? Like, what you should be doing as a top TAM?
I was about to ask the same thing, but this is like an ongoing thing, How do
Yeah,
you know
exactly. Means
when
it's
it
not like
ends?
a start and end.
Yeah,
It's always
Um,
happening. So
it's always there.
how somebody says that Laura is the top TAM I have in my team, or somebody was not able to perform. So what would be the criteria as a KPI there?
I'm trying to think. We're not measured on regular engagements with customers per se. There's no running log and checks of
Okay.
yes, I did this or yes, I did that. From a goal perspective, again, certifications is key. Making sure that you're staying abreast of topics.
Hmm.
One thing is giving back to the business. Contributing back. to
Okay.
outside of your normal job duties. That's one of the KPIs per se that you're measured on. So like for example, my involvement with the Cloud Up for Her program, Parna, giving back regularly, trying to encourage others. That's one of the things is one of my KPIs per se in terms of my goals. Another thing too, again, is specialization. So internally with AWS, we call those technical field communities. So you really want our focus on, specializing in, like, for example, serverless technologies, or if it's security, or, monitoring and cost optimization. There's different things you can focus on in that regard. But otherwise, KPIs per se, there's not a huge measurement scale, but maybe you guys have something differently as a technical trainer, that you have certain KPIs per se. So ours are more around the customer itself. Like we work on support plans, so we kind of
Mhm.
have working with the customer, we identify key things that are important to them on a 3 to 6 month basis. And so we're really focused on those things and helping them be successful in those business outcomes. Those are probably our most measurable KPIs per se. But again, it's not like a checkbox kind of thing, like a report card of, yes, Laura did this or Laura did that. Um, I think it's just an ongoing. I don't know. There's no meter per se. So
Get it. Get it.
yeah,
You
you
are
are
on mute,
mute,
Parna.
Anna.
So how often do you have to interact with the customers? Like monthly, weekly once? Is it like a how do I say proactive call where you are checking in on them, or you wait for them to call you? How does it work?
A little bit of both. Each
Okay.
customer is different based on their needs, but my current customers, we do have a week or a biweekly stand up call per se, where we all get together. But then from those calls spawn other engagements. For example, a customer might want to look into systems manager, patch manager functionality. They might have done a little bit of attended some session that maybe Parna or Ashish had given, and now they want to learn more and dive deep and really be able to implement that at their company. And so then I will have additional engagements with them to get a specialist to come in and actually talk with them. So then we'll engage with the customer then as well. So some customers it's more than others. It just depends on how quickly they're moving and how much need they actually have. So every day is different. Some day I might not have any communication with the customer. Sometimes I might have a lot of communication with the customer, like this past week, where every day was very busy.
Mm.
So it's one
Yeah,
of the
I can
things that's
imagine.
key in the
Customers are
role is to be
demanding, isn't
flexible.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, means I can completely relate to those things, what you're saying. Now, looking in terms of soft skills or behavioral skills, obviously, being a technical person, you need technical skills. What are the top skills you feel you use on a day-to-day basis when you're interacting with customers?
I think it's having customer obsession for sure. Really making what they want be very it's very important, So being able to discern what's most important to them. So again, really great communication skills with the customer and internally as well. You need to be able to network and connect with resources, identify resources to assist. So I think communication skills for sure is key. I think in any role at AWS probably that's true, or any role in general, unless you're maybe someone that likes to kind of be in the box and just specialize inside that little box of yours, which is okay too. But so customer skills, communication skills in that regard, technical skills also. So you need to be able to have technical conversations with the customer. They're going to be talking about their existing AWS workloads, and each day it could be something different you've never encountered before. So it's a matter of, identifying your own gaps per se, being honest with yourself, learning about those technologies, and presenting to the customer at times, or sometimes if it's a little bit over your head, because let's be honest, we all can't know everything about AWS. There's so many services and so many layers of depth. You have to utilize specialists, the people that really know those key details, that really know that deep understanding and get them in front of the customer. So being able to be in that regard of engaging, networking, and understanding your own weaknesses per se, or areas of growth, and knowing who to connect to as well. So, and then I think too, just understanding the business. Like TAMs are aligned in specific business verticals currently. So our focus is, a certain subset of customers, if you will, that have similarities. So you also have a lot of skill sets in that area that also are important as well to be successful. So those are some of the key things, I guess, I think about being successful in the role.
Great. And I guess there are again levels between associate TAM and then a TAM and then a senior TAM. So how I feel that TAM's role core responsibility is a customer obsession, but how responsibilities change as we move up the ladder into a TAM role.
Sometimes those are kind of gray in terms of, I mean, we might have someone that's an associate TAM or a TAM or a senior TAM doing similar things at times.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think as you progress up in the ladder, per se, if you want to pursue more management per se or more leadership roles, you can do things like enterprise support lead, for example. Like we have two of those within my team, and they more guide some of the younger TAMs for sure. They've been around at AWS for a while. They have knowledge to share about interacting with customers or specific services. I'm trying to think here as well. So, again, certification levels. As a senior TAM, for example, you're required to have professional or specialty certifications, where an associate TAM or just a TAM might only have associate level degrees or certifications rather required in their role. So, again, that is just, it's different levels of engagement with the customer too, expectation wise. So, a senior TAM might have a customer that's a little bit larger or has more, specific skills that are required of them. It all depends, though, Ashish. There's no,
Yeah.
again, there's certain goals, but you'll find differing between different groups and different customers for sure. And we're on a different part in our journey as well, So I could
Exactly.
stay just a TAM per se, or I could decide to be a little more forthright and actually pursue the next level up if I want to. But it's not required. Obviously,
Hmm.
continued education is important, but you don't
Yeah.
have to climb the ladder, so to speak, to a senior TAM if you're not looking for that, or an ESL. Kind of goes back to Prasad's recent post on LinkedIn about being a contributor and being wherever you're happy in those roles. So,
Great answer.
Actually, I have
mhm.
some questions. I think a lot of people wish to know whether you need to have prior experience as a project manager or a program manager in order to pursue a TAM
Yeah.
role.
um, I don't. I mean, I was never a program manager per se prior to being a TAM. Again, my initial background was mostly development. So I
Okay.
was I was a software developer engineer for many years before I moved into more of an admin role. It's just a natural progression for me to move into those that higher level of, because I've been in the environment space for so long. Um, there's no specific titles per se. Again, it's technical breadth and depth. Those are one of the key things, is having the knowledge about many different technologies. So during the interview process, for example, they will probe you in terms of what do you know about all these different topics. You know what I mean? And how deep, how far down can you go on that particular topic? So those are key things.
Yes.
Customer service, or not customer service, but customer obsession is definitely key. They're testing that, with the STAR questionnaire, if you will, the STAR
Mm.
questions
Star
during the
format.
interview process. Yeah, yeah, STAR format, exactly.
Yeah, and
Um,
Laura helped me. Laura helped me with the star format too. So I did some mock
Great.
sessions with her. So thanks to Laura also.
you're welcome. Yeah,
That's so
yeah,
good to hear.
yeah. Be able to really understand. I mean, it's one thing to memorize leadership principles, but to truly understand them and apply them to past roles, and how you really are, portraying those or actually living them per se, is very important. So if you're looking to, hire with AWS, definitely focus on on leadership principles, embrace them, and truly, you either are doing them or not doing them. And if you're not really portraying them, why not? How can you maybe improve?
Yeah.
Understand those and really think about how your past roles have applied to that per se, in that particular fitting those principles. So,
Makes sense. Now, if you
mhm.
look around your colleagues who are TAM, do you find a very specific skill set they all come from? Like, are they ex-architect or are they a developer or did they had a specific certification? Is it like that?
it's a mixed. It's a
It's
mixed
mixed.
group. It's mixed. Yeah, I think it's again, it goes back to that technical depth and breadth. If you have a wide
Yeah.
variety of skills, I work with folks that had an infrastructure background. I think that's quite common, actually, infrastructure background or developers.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's completely mixed. There's no specific requirement. Leadership principles, technical depth and breadth, customer obsession, good communication skills are definitely key things you're going to want to have to pursue those types of roles.
Makes sense. And if I talk about that, TAMs are also part of your enterprise support. So there is a question from Ali: an enterprise plan open a case or access TAM via email, or they have access to TAM over phone as well? Do you live by a 24 by 7 phone?
Well, we work in a team, and there's clusters within that team. So for example, there is an on-call rotation required in my particular TAM role, and it could be different for each particular group. There's about, I think, 9 of us currently in my team. So every ninth week, I'm on call, and then I would need to be available somewhat 24/7. It's not to field a ticket or a case for an issue a customer has per se. The customer will always open that up with the support desk itself. So the support engineers will be the first person to receive any kind of notification that the customer is in pain and needs some assistance. Um, and as a TAM, again, it's more about making sure that they're getting the proper response from the support team. And or if it's a really serious thing that needs, critical escalation and engagement quick as possible, that's where the TAM will step in to make sure that we engage necessary people to make sure the customer's voice is heard and the incident potentially is addressed as soon as possible. But otherwise, being a TAM is very flexible. I'm a single mom, so life is busy. I own a home. I like my wildlife photography, so I like my quiet times and outdoor space, if you will. So it doesn't tread on that per se. There's lots of room to still enjoy all those other things. So it's a great work-life balance here. AWS is something that they very much are stressed and want people to embrace and enjoy and have that work-life balance is key.
Great insights, Laura.
I agree. And if I talk about, like, this is a solution architect track we are looking for, and then is there a specific type of essays you would be saying are the best to work with, or they have a very I'm not able to frame question properly. Like, what are the top qualities in a essay you would be looking as a TAM?
Technical depth usually.
Okay.
Because for example, a customer will come to you with a specific need. They need to do X, and you need to understand, okay, well, what does X require? What is this business outcome that we need to come to fruition? So then again, everyone's going to have different skill sets. Every solution architect is not going to be the same in terms of their experience or their interests. Like I
Yeah.
said, they might want to specialize. They might want to specialize in serverless technologies or data analytics, whatever it might be. So, you're looking for a specific solution architect that has those skill sets. So again, it's all about networking, keeping track, and someone just said this the other day when I was looking for some assistance with something that tamming is a team sport. We're not by ourselves. You don't have to have all the answers. You can look to other TAMs as well and say, hey, I need a specialist or I need a solutions architect that can assist me with this.
Hmm.
And it's a great, we use Slack as well internally to, communicate. So we can always identify which particular architect is appropriate in this case. So it's not always just one, you know, I think for me personally, that was the hardest thing when I first moved to AWS is that you're not going to be an expert right away in all things. You're going to have to
Yeah.
rely on other people. In my former role, I'd been in the same space for quite a while, so I kind of became somewhat of, an admin or the person to go to for answers because I had worked on the product so long. And at AWS, you have to get used to the uncomfortable feeling that you're not going to know all the answers. And
Yeah.
same for during interviewing or in the role. You have to go with it and be able to find resources that can assist. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we
It's
can totally relate because
ever
every
evolving,
customer is
ever evolving.
different. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, if I share my experience when I joined AWS, I started maintaining a list which says that what I do not know. So that list kept growing and
That's
growing, and I had to stop maintaining it because it was impossible
mentality.
to maintain that list, because the list of things I do
yeah.
not know is increasing every day. So that's complicated.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
we may
indeed.
have addressed this in bits and pieces, but we may want to hear about how SA role is different from a TAM.
So in an essay, again, I'm not ever fulfilled that role myself, but what I've observed so far as a TAM, an essay is someone that's going to help the customer potentially to build a new solution or build a new workload to meet a specific business outcome. Or they might help tweak an existing one. For example, maybe one has different problem points within the workload that needs to be addressed. That happened just recently, actually, where they
Mhm.
had, some CloudWatch, for example, and some portions of it were not working as expected. And so the solutions architect associate will come in, take a look to see what they currently have, because the solutions architect associate doesn't build everything the customer has. The customer is doing their own thing per se. We're not always involved in everything they've done in the past.
Yeah.
Maybe they built a bunch of workloads prior to coming to AWS enterprise support before they had a TAM or a solutions architect associate that was assigned to them to assist. Um, so but for the most part, solutions architect associate, again, they're listening to the customer and working backwards. They're understanding what the customer's business outcomes are needed, translating that into what particular solution might be appropriate, whether it be an AWS service, it could be potentially one of our partners in the marketplace that offers a product offering that's already ready to go per se, and they can get to market as quick as possible. So those are the key things I think from solution architect associate. They're more building, they're more putting the pieces together per se, all the different services. A TAM isn't necessarily doing that. We're not building systems. We're helping the customer find resources that can help them build. Solutions architect, associate, specialists, whatever it might be. So, although I'm sure some TAMs that are doing some SA work too. Again, everyone's different. Everyone comes with different skill sets, different relationship with the customer. It's all variable. So, yeah.
I have a question I've been always curious about that. Do you need awareness about other cloud platforms as well, Laura? Because when you're talking to a customer, they might be comparing things with you, right? So
Indeed.
do you
Mm-hmm.
need to be aware as well as a TAM?
Somewhat. Again, it depends on the customer. Sometimes you do have customers that are multi-cloud. They already have solutions in various cloud capacities for whatever the case might be. For that specific workload it's required, or maybe they're developing solutions that actually manage different workloads on different clouds. So far as a team, I've not had to have intimate knowledge, but definitely behooves us to become more aware and become
Because
as much as you know, help you in everything you do. But again, if you don't have
yeah,
all the answers, it like Ashish said, you add it to your list of things you need to improve on. And if you don't know yet, then you engage others that you know do have those skills to teach you potentially or to assist
yeah,
your customer. Yeah.
because that significantly increases your breadth of knowledge, right? If you have to know about others too.
Now, if they would just standardize the naming conventions, it'd make it much easier for us, wouldn't it? In
Yeah,
terms across different cloud providers.
right.
So, yeah.
And they are also evolving. AWS is also evolving, so the
Yeah.
landscape is changing every day. Good, thank
Indeed.
you.
Um,
Yeah, and let me pick a question from Asit here. In a critical issue, what do you do if you can't find a technical resource specific to an issue?
well, when a customer enters a case into our system, they're going to choose a specific service that's failing, and so the support desk. My understanding is that they have key people in all of those services readily available. So the engagement happens even before we have to help escalate. We don't have to find someone to help. That's an entire system all by itself, entire team that manages all those support cases. As a TAM, we're just there to help out if things aren't going as planned, if they're not getting, answers or they're having severe business impact. And the TAM is going to raise that up to other people that can really assist and drive, get more engagement, more people behind the scenes per se. But internally, again, it's all about networking, understanding where to find those resources when you do need to engage. Maybe we need to engage someone that's higher up in the service team. But again, my ESL, enterprise support lead, and also my enterprise service manager that manages the team itself, whenever we have those kinds of cases that need further engagement, we will work with them too, because they obviously have higher level of knowledge per se of key people to connect with, perhaps, to get the necessary resolution and engagement as needed from specific specialists that can assist.
But
Yeah.
we all know about good days. That good day would be a customer is happy, everything is going as planned. What a bad day for TAM looks like.
Honestly, some days it's just there's too many things to do.
Mhm.
As with all roles, like I said, some days are unexpected where you get all of your customers need things now, or it's hot topics, and it has severe business impacts if you don't react right away. So that sometimes can be a little bit frustrating, or maybe be a bad day per se. But in a TAM's role, again, you're always there just to be the voice of the customer. So if the customer's upset, they're not upset at you, but you're the person that can actually help make things better, whether it be engaging necessary people. So in that regard, it's not a bad day per se. It's just it's a day and it's an opportunity to help your customer more than anything else. But I think sometimes just the unpredictability of the workload sometimes is only bad day per se. So it's not that
I
often it
I
happens.
love
Yeah,
Laura's positivity. She just rubs
exactly.
it
I
on
was
to
about to
everybody.
say that this is the way you should be looking at the things. There is no
Yeah,
bad days. Everything is a learning.
yeah.
Great answer there. And yeah, if it was a star format, you would have got 10 out of 10, isn't it, in your interview?
Yeah,
uh, so, in critical situation that a customer poses, it is a team work in time and being humble and having good collaboration skill helps, I guess. Yeah, exactly, Ranga. Yeah, that's what just Laura
indeed.
reiterated. So, yeah, exactly, this is how it happens. So, do you also have any escalation mechanism within TAM ladder?
Yeah, again, like as a TAM, for example, I'm on call this weekend actually. So if I was to get a case that was opened that required escalation, again, our first next step would be to go to our enterprise support lead. And
Hmm.
then if he's not able, or maybe he's not available, maybe he stepped out for a moment or whatever, then we continue escalating up to the enterprise service manager. And I'm sorry, enterprise support manager rather, not
Yeah.
service manager. And yeah, so and then from there, we do have internal lists per se and a hierarchy of people within different services and such to refer to as well. So then we can kind of continue to climb the ladder, so to speak, of necessary people.
Great, makes sense. And I'll
Yeah.
just highlight a comment from Sharik, who was in support. Sharik is a AWS instructor now, but he was in support. So obviously there is a
Mm.
lot of division within within support for specialization. So serverless, DevOps, big data. Obviously there are people to help you out in all these cases. So you are in safe hand. I would say that that's a good thing. All right,
Indeed. Yeah.
great. Now, there was a question which is not directly to the role you are playing, but it is a generic question like how you build your network. Because TAM role is all about internal networking as well as connecting to customers' own network also. So, what is your best networking tip?
But within AWS itself, again, I can think the questions at both, but within AWS itself, it's just a natural progression because the nature of being a TAM and having to, you work with customers, business outcomes, and identify services that you've never worked with before. Then you start exploring and meeting other people. Um, Also, there's other things internally, initiatives to network, like being a woman in tech. There's specific groups for women that to network with other women or to get to know their people. I try to also, like volunteer for other things. Like I volunteered to work a conference game day, so I could, meet other TAMs live in person. Since I've worked from home, I don't see people that often, besides on video. So I try to do that as well to network. Um, the Cloud Up for Her program that Parna and I both kind of originated from was great for networking with people outside of AWS and AWS both. Start to meet other people, that have specific skill sets. This program too, Ashish, the Visa program, I've learned so much and different resources that I can go to and learn, yourself and James and Parna always posting great resources of information that I just can't always keep up, to be honest. There's so much great info coming at me. So that's a way to network in a way as well. So
That's a great tip, and thanks for kind mention.
yeah.
I would like to take one last question if anyone has it on the audience. Otherwise, we will wrap it up because it's already like 30 minutes, whereas beyond what we expected. That always happen with BESA program. Like there's so much to cover, so many things, so many
Yeah.
questions, and we love support from all of us. So thanks for that. But one last question I would have if somebody has not come up, like what would be your career tip? You migrated from different company to AWS, and obviously you've been into various roles. So what are like core career tips you could give to someone?
I don't know. For me, I always want more. I always want to learn more. I always want to do more. Just like you, Ashish, you have your list of things you don't know what to do yet. So that's my
Right.
goals. I keep wanting to learn. So that's key for sure. Just keep learning and be uncomfortable when you don't understand certain topics yet. It will come, or you'll find other people to assist you along the way. If you really would you want to move into a role at AWS or anywhere, understand the role, read it through. Don't just send a standard resume. Really, work on your resume and really think about what skills you really have that apply to that specific role.
Hmm.
You don't have to have all the certifications up front per se. Maybe some roles will expect them, and if so, then get busy working on them. Really have that gumption to give up that weekend party or whatever it might be, that fun thing. The rewards will be great for you in the future if you do that. So that's my best advice. And network with people, get to know people, get to understand what roles are to see if you really truly will love it or not. Pick their brains, say, is it really going to mean this or mean that, and truly understand the role you're applying for. I know when I was looking for a new role, I chose some initially that weren't a great fit. I think I shared that with you, Ashish, potentially. I interviewed for a couple of roles. I'm like, I don't think I really wanted that role. I don't think that really was me in the end, so yeah.
Great. So on that note, I would stop any more questions. Thank you so much, Laura. Great
Thank you
insight.
so much,
Thank
Everyone
you.
Laura.
is saying thank you. And yeah, it was really indeed a good knowing about all the things TAM is doing, how it is different, and how you can become a successful person. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much for
much.
having me today.
Thank you so much, Laura. It
And
was insightful.
Yeah,
Always a joy
exactly.
talking to you. And at this time of
likewise.
the day,
Sorry.
night,
Yeah.
some
It's
Yeah.
6:30, but the sun has risen now, so it's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
sun
Yeah. So
started. Yeah.
we ruined your weekend a bit. Maybe you could get some rest in the
No,
afternoon.
it's not yet.
So you do a lot of mentoring. So if you
yeah.
know about Cloud Up for her, Laura is a mentor there. So get in touch. Maybe just send a thank you note on LinkedIn. Obviously, it would encourage her also to be again here and help you also to build your network. So it is all about networking. It's all about making the right connection at the right time. So thanks for doing that, Laura, and thanks for appearing here. We would post these links, and if you have any other resource which can be helpful, let us know, and we would post it into the channel so that everyone would know. But great having you, talking to you, really encouraging. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care,
Take
everyone.
care.
Yeah.
So,
Bye.
everyone, have a good weekend, and we will meet you next week. If you have any suggestions, any feedback, any communication you want to do to us, feel free. Do not be hesitant. Just send a message or a mail, whatever works for you. But we would be happy to accommodate any suggestions you have. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.